Hello everyone, I'm Thomas Wooden Railway and welcome to the first video in a brand new series where I take a look at random Thomas things that I find on Facebook Marketplace and decide to purchase. And this video series is going to be me documenting the process and going through the items and just seeing what we find, seeing what people are selling out there nowadays. So I've thought about doing this video series for a while, and it was really due to the encouragement of my friends that I decided to actually go through with it. We're all interested in Thomas and Thomas Wooden Railway, and we find some cool things from time to time, and we usually share them within our group. But I think it would be worth making a video series like this to just kind of show off some of the cool things that I find, and I think you guys will all enjoy it. So first of all, since this is the first video in the series, I do have some background information to roll with here to begin with. It's going to be kind of boring. We won't do this in future videos, but for those who don't know, Facebook Marketplace is probably the premier selling avenue for people wanting to get rid of secondhand stuff in the United States. And by stuff, I mean just stuff. Like, it's really anything, any legal thing you can sell probably ends up on Facebook Marketplace. It's not, it's not like donations like Goodwill or anything. Some people do give stuff away for free, but most people are trying to earn a little bit of money from whatever it is. So I've bought stuff on Facebook over the years. I've sold stuff on Facebook, and it differs from eBay because eBay I see is more of like a national or international thing, like if you want to reach a global audience, whereas as of right now you can do the same thing with Facebook. I haven't really tried it, but Facebook is meant sort of as like a local or neighborhood thing. So that's really the difference there. And the great thing about Facebook Marketplace is, as of the making of this video, they don't charge you anything to list stuff, which is awesome. So it has really replaced another website in recent years called Craigslist, and this is what I grew up with. And Craigslist has always been, I guess, unique. They've never really bothered to update the website. It still has a very old-fashioned, late 90s, early 2000s internet look. But surprisingly, it is still wildly popular. But growing up, especially in the early years of my channel, or even till about 10 years ago, Craigslist was really the only local way to find Thomas Wooden Railway items, or anything for that matter. And the best way to describe Craigslist is, I guess, sketchy. It's just a little bit too informal. You usually have to email somebody or call them. Each seller is different, and it's just, I don't know. I feel like Facebook Marketplace has more nailed the idea of what it's like to buy and sell stuff locally, primarily because you have to have a Facebook account in order to do anything. So you know that you are dealing with a legitimate person. And even if you aren't at the beginning of like an interaction, you're not going to get very far when talking to a bot or something, because the whole point is that you're trying to sell stuff and meeting in person and all that. So I really think Facebook has the advantage there. Craigslist still exists. I go on there from time to time, but I prefer Facebook by far and away over Craigslist. And I think Facebook Marketplace really took off around COVID because people were stuck in their homes for several months on end. We were all on our phones, and it was like, well, it's the springtime. I guess we should do some spring cleaning. And that's when I really got into Facebook Marketplace. I remember talking with my buddy Wooden Railway Only during the summer 2019 Thomas meetup we did, and I had heard about Facebook Marketplace, but I was kind of on the fence about it. I was like, man, it just seems like a clone copy of Craigslist. And he was like, no, like, it's legit. Usually the sellers are pretty eager to get rid of stuff. You have to have an account. It's just more of a legit and arguably a safer way to do business. So since I started, let's say 4.5 years ago, almost 5 years ago on Facebook Marketplace, I've bought dozens and dozens of lots, primarily Thomas Wooden Railway, but occasionally, some parents or families are selling their entire kids, Thomas collection. So you'll get a couple different merchandise ranges in there, but I find it to be very fun. It's sort of a hobby for me. And I always go out and buy lots with the purpose of keeping at least a few items. I'm not just going out and reselling everything. But if there are a few duplicates in the lot, I don't tend to keep that stuff just because I would have boxes and boxes of stuff that I don't really need. So this video series is designed to, I guess, chronicle the cool things that I find on Facebook Marketplace. And I don't really want to get bogged down on price, like good deal versus bad deal. It's more about like, hey, here's just the stuff that people were selling. You know, here's the condition of it. You know, maybe draw some clues as to, did they buy any sets when their kids were a Thomas fan, or did they buy anything individually, that type of thing. So I'm a big fan of Facebook Marketplace. I arguably buy more stuff off of Facebook Marketplace than eBay nowadays. And I just kind of want to show you some of my adventures. So I have a bit of a backlog of items that I need to get through, but in the future, I see this as me going out and purchasing something and then immediately coming home and placing it here on the table and being like, okay, so here are the pictures from the listing. And I'm looking for X, Y, and Z, and this is what they look like. And do we find any surprises? Because I have bought items or bought listings that are very cut and dry. The seller does a great job, you know, sending in pictures that are high quality. And then sometimes you buy stuff and the one picture they show is really blurry. It looks like they were taking the picture while they were falling. And some people don't know Thomas and they refuse to elaborate, but the price is really good. So, you know, it's not like, you know, Facebook Marketplace is not designed to be like, well, I don't really know what I'm going to get, but, you know, here goes. Like, you really should have a full understanding of what you're buying, but, you know, sometimes surprises do happen. So let's take a look at the first item, the first listing, I should say, that I want to show off in this video. So the bad part here is there's no one picture that has everything in it, and this would be a Thomas Wooden Railway top tip. If you're selling stuff on Facebook or eBay, try to get everything in at least like one 16:9 picture, just for simplicity's sake. Even if you're selling like a ton of stuff, like just try your best. But anyway, looking through these images, we have a couple of bins of track. There's one clear bin of trains. There's a roundhouse there. And so the two bins of track, looking at them, right off the bat, I can tell that looks like mostly to be clickety-clack, which is good because we're always interested in that. If we go underneath the boxes, there's like this Polar Express Christmas tree, which I believe might be Brio or some other brand. Not personally interested in that, but, you know, that's the thing is on Facebook, beggars can't be choosers. There is this, I believe it's called, the technical term is the lifting bridge, which is missing one of the stop signs, but there is at least that green roof on that building, which comes off and can become easily dislodged. So that's good that that's there. There is like this crane, which again, the top piece, the red part can come off. So sometimes you're left with just the base, which is really awkward. So that appears to be intact. And then we have one of the cool items in this listing, a Henry's tunnel that appears to be in really good condition. I don't see any chipping or tears in the red paper, like the red print that's used on the side there. So we're off to a good start. The roundhouse is also interesting. This is a first edition roundhouse that comes with the wooden version of the roundabout turntable, which I always thought was super cool. And the good news there is that it has the red sides on the turntable. Those are usually lost to time. You go through a few years of rigorous play and they break off and probably just end up in the trash somewhere. So anytime I see a roundhouse with the turntable that has the sides, that is a great find for me. And if we roll on over to the other bin with the trains in it, there's some good stuff in here. The one thing that immediately catches my eye is that Flying Scotsman. You can see the big wheels on the green body there, and there's at least one of his tenders in the corner there, which is promising as well. But as looking at this picture, it doesn't look like we're getting the whole package as of this picture, so that's something to keep in mind. But, you know, there's looks like Donald or Douglas, the Diesel, Jane, potentially Ada, Jane, and Mabel in there. That's the thing. You don't really know. A Thomas Wooden Railway top tip would be to feel free to ask questions. If you feel like you're owed better pictures or you're kind of on the fence about purchasing something, if the seller really wants to get rid of stuff, they will take the time to take pictures and spread stuff out. I would consider it a big red flag if they don't. I would think of it as they're hiding something, and that would kind of make me a little bit wary. So overall, there's some really good stuff in here. It appears to be late 90s, early 2000s. Looking in the engine box, a really kind of weird thing that popped out to me was Molly, because everything else in there is, like I said, late 90s, early 2000s, and then we go 10 years into the future, and there's Molly. So potentially the seller of this stuff, maybe these items went through a few generations of kids. Maybe they're not even the first people who have had this set or something like that. Maybe they bought it from somebody else back in the day. Anyway, it's fun to look at this stuff and just kind of think about the history and whatnot and all of the playtime that these toys went through. So because this lot is so big, I'm going to break it up into a few different sections, and it was really helpful that the seller actually did that for me. We were talking about those clear tubs, and here is the first one with all of the engines. I have taken a brief look through here, and I'll explain more about this later, but for the most part, I haven't gone through and looked at the condition of everything, so this should be, you know, a pretty, you know, genuine reaction. I think in the future I'll do a better job of being more surprised and authentic, but there are a couple of things I wanted to talk about. So first of all, the items here appear to be in pretty good condition. I mean, they've had some wear and tear, but you have to remember these items are going on 25 years old in some cases, and so, you know, you just, like, that's a lot of playtime. They probably sat in storage for a while, but you don't know. So this is the tub with all of the trains. You can definitely see there are some non-Thomas things in here, which is extremely common. A lot of parents or families, when they try to get rid of this stuff, they just want everything gone. They don't really know the difference between this is not a Thomas item, for example. They just see it all as train stuff, which is totally fair. So looking through here, in terms of stuff that I'm really interested in, this is a great Sodor mail coach. Year is 1996, potentially. I believe that would make sense. Decent condition. Big fan of rolling stock. You'll notice throughout this video series, I tend to keep a lot of the rolling stock because, in my opinion, you can't ever have too many, you know, coaches or trucks or whatever. The engines, less so. It's kind of like when you have one version of a character, you know, you're kind of there. And like I said, I don't keep everything just because I get a lot of duplicates. So let's just work our way through this. Here's a white cargo car, which I believe came with that crane we were talking about. I don't know. I think it comes with a blue cargo piece. I don't know if that's included in here or not, but cargo car is definitely a keep for me. This tar tanker is actually in great condition. Sometimes you find these just very, very beat up. I'm going to say most of the items in this lot are not going to have names on the bottom. They're probably before 2000, 2001. But I mean, tar tanker, they're really great condition. And we would probably, expect a fuel tanker in there as well, since they were sold as a 2-pack. This one is in very good condition as well. Some marks on the side. I've never really cared that rolling stock is beat up. Honestly, like if this had chips in it, still fine by me, because it's rolling stock, and if you were to imagine you were running a real railway, this stuff would get beat up in the real world. Another thing that comes to mind here is this white roof Rusty, which appears to be in pretty good condition. I wouldn't really call that's not like a chip on the front. That's kind of just looks like a groove in the wood that they used. But for some collectors out there, white roof Rusties are really cool. 90, that looks like 98 if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, maybe 98. I didn't realize. I thought white roof Rusties were only sold for a couple of years, but this appears to be from one of the later versions. I have one of these. I actually have a couple of versions of white roof Rusty, so probably not a keep in my book. Still cool nonetheless. Probably a first version of Peter Sam here. Eyebrows have been rubbed off just a little bit. Some marks on the side. A little bit of paint chipping. Not terrible. 99? Would that be right? I thought we had plastic funnels at that point. 90, yeah, that says 99. Okay, so Peter Sam right there. We got a version of the Diesel or Diesel 261 or Bowler. This item actually kind of perplexes me because when you look at what this item sells for on eBay, you know, it's a rare item, the fact that it wasn't sold for a number of years. It was probably overlooked by kids and parents at the time, but there's plenty of them out there, and I really do believe, I would say that's the peak of Thomas Wooden Railway is late 90s, early 2000s, probably right before they started doing road stuff. I mean, even like the poorly selling items from that era are still like produced in the tens of thousands. We got a Donald's Tender, no name on the bottom. No plastic coal. That's 97. Oh, that's diesel. I was going to see. Aha. Right off to the side here. So we got Donald and Donald's Tender. That's really good. Again, you know, some of these items that are quote unquote two pieces, like the engine and the tender, sometimes the engine will only be there, sometimes the tender will only be there. The fact that you get both, that is definitely a win in my book. We have this Henry, and I believe Henry's tender is here somewhere. Looks like right here. So again, like speckled coal underneath, we're looking at 97. Face is a little bit worn. If you're into eyebrows and that stuff. If you're not, then overall, pretty good. A few chips here and there, but not a bad version of Henry. That's kind of my analysis so far, is that these engines, these toys are definitely played with. It's not like they just sat there. Some kid definitely had a fun time with Thomas toys, but James, I would say James is probably was one of the kids' favorite toys, because James is a little bit more beat up than some of the other engines. The face is pretty beat up, and the funnel and the dome from droppage, I would say, factors into that as well. Here's a non-Thomas thing. I've seen this over the years. This might have been like a learning curve thing. I don't really know the brand off the top. Oh, it's Lionel. Okay, that makes sense. Oh, but it was made by Learning Curve in 1998. So for those who don't know, I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole, but there was like a Thomas competitor toy that was made by Learning Curve that reused a lot of the same molds and buildings as Thomas. And this was something that they built. It's battery powered, but unsurprisingly does not work. If I remember, I will come in there and take the batteries out and see if it works. I've never been super interested in this stuff, and this is a pretty common toy you see in these lots. So again, not really anything I'm crying over. I believe we don't have a complete set. We have Ada and Jane, but no Mabel. So these were sold. The three coaches were sold together, so presumably Mabel was lost, which is unfortunate, but it does happen. But, you know, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, as they say. There's a few versions of Thomas here, and this is not entirely uncommon either. Thomas is usually one of the more popular toys. A Thomas gets lost or gets really beat up, they replace him. So looking at these two, I would say like this was the first Thomas. It got a little bit more wear on it. 98 is the date under there, right? I can never see 96, or actually that is 96, I believe. That's the thing, is even looking at it close, it is 96. I can never see 96, 98, or 99 very clearly. So there's one Thomas, and here's another Thomas, 96 as well. So we got 2 1996 Thomases in this lot. Again, like I said, not super surprising. Got this toy car. Means nothing to me. This Brio stuff may be worth something to other collectors out there, but not to me. I don't find that particularly interesting. Same thing with this stuff. I very rarely keep this stuff unless I know it may have some potential value. So it looks like about 80% of this stuff is legit Thomas. And then there's some... This appears, oh, that is Brio. I was like, this looks like Lego, but that's a Brio. I don't know. More Brio stuff, which again, not a big fan of. This is something I noticed. These wooden railway figures, they might have dates on them. 94. So that's what's interesting, is like the oldest stuff we've seen so far is like 96, but then these wooden figures, and you can tell by like the shade of the paint or even like the wood that they use, these are some older figures. So apparently these are from 1994, which I find interesting. I wonder if these were on the shelf for a while, and then, you know, during the heydays of whenever this family came in and bought stuff, they decided to buy these as well. So I actually tend to keep figures. I have dozens and dozens of each of these, but I find the figures to be pretty cool personally. And I lied. There's actually a third version of Thomas here. And how much do we want to bet? It's 1996. It is 1996. Wow. So it is entirely possible maybe these toys were split by a couple of siblings. They wanted their own Thomases, which is fair. Just kind of interesting. This is the item that threw me for a bit, is Molly, because all of these other engines we've looked at are like 90s, and Molly is not 90s, but Molly is in really good condition, which is awesome. It's a little bit puzzling. You have to wonder the story as to how Molly ended up in this collection of 1990s Thomas stuff. Here's Fred, dated 97. And I always, for fun, I always check the magnet polarity just for fun. Decent condition, not bad. There's a Mike, but maybe no tender. So that would be our first, I wouldn't really call it a casualty. Oh wait, I lied. There's Mike's tender. Okay, so we have the first version of Mike. Again, not bad condition. A few chips here and there. This Mike, though, is pretty common for like a character that nobody knew. When I grew up, I don't know if I've ever told this story. When I was growing up, I had Mike before I had James, and I used Mike as James until I got James. Like I even had the book of Thomas stuff growing up, so I kind of knew who Mike was, which maybe some kids wouldn't, but like I still used him as James. Here's Toby. I find this one a little interesting. I think the face is a little bit higher than normal. You'd think it'd be flush with the cow catcher at the bottom. Appears to be a bit higher than usual, and before you, oh, factory error. I mean, like, that's not really big enough to warrant something like that. In my book, 90, oh gosh. The printing on black wheels is always the toughest. It's like I need a flashlight. 98? I believe that's 98. I think that lines up. Not a bad Toby, but again, a super common item. Sodor line caboose. I keep all of these. I have way too many Sodor line cabooses. They're actually at the I have a whole line up on one of the bookshelves to the right here. In my book, you can never have too many of these. You know, it's like the clones. You know, you may have a need for them one day, but they're still great while they last. Here's an Oliver. Little bit of a kind of a cocked face right there off to the side. It's like he's saying, like he told him like this unbelievable fact, and he's like, really? That's incredible, something like that. 97 is that Oliver with the wood funnel. Again, I'd say like all of the engines in this lot, maybe minus Molly, which is like mint, all of the engines in this lot are like low to medium play. I have seen far worse. And there's actually another Oliver. That's interesting because multiple Thomases make sense, but multiple Olivers, you don't usually see that. This says 94? Am I crazy? I swear that says 94. Yeah, but so I think what I say 96. Did I even look at the dates on this? Am I having a moment here? 97, you're right. So 94 and 97 in that order. Interesting. Okay, and they appear to have like the same amount of wear. And I don't know if it's visible on camera, but the one on the right, the later one, has slightly darker paint, I would say. Here's a Percy. Percy has a lot of wear. And 98? Yeah, no, sorry, 96. My bad. Yeah, so half of this series is just going to be me getting the date wrong when I talk about engines, which will be fun. We're almost done here, by the way. But that's the thing is like this is only the engines from this lot. So here's a lady, and so we know this cannot come out more like earlier than 2000. So apparently some kid had this stuff up until 2000. Lady's actually in really good condition. There's one chip on the back here, but actually really good. In some versions of Lady, if it went through like extreme play, this plastic funnel, or it's like a rubber funnel, this one is particularly hard, might have hardened over the years, just because it's 25 plus years old. Some of these will actually break off. You'll see missing ones on eBay, which are kind of comical, but a very good condition Lady right there. Some trees, which are not Thomas branded. I'm guessing Brio with the rest of this stuff. The breakdown train. This appears to be an old one based on the magnet. No name on the bottom. and it looks like 97. So I have a couple of these. This is probably a toss-up if I keep this or not. Because again, I'm kind of the opinion, oh, you could use you could have a whole express full of breakdown trains. But the thing with these old ones, I actually kind of prefer the newer breakdown trains because the magnets on these are just not very strong. They'll connect to the car here. This is kind of a toss-up. I showed this signal off. I think it's been glued. I apologize if it won't focus, but I think it's been glued to the base. Actually, it does move. Oh, there we go. Never mind. But it's been in there a while. If you could see, that's green. I don't know if it'll focus. That's green paint on the bottom there. So that's probably been in there for 2 decades, I'd say. I end up keeping all of that stuff because, again, you can't have too many signals or additions to your line or your wooden railway line. Here's diesel, nothing special. Actually, kind of maybe has some paint on the side there. I hope that's paint. Usually when I go through and sell this stuff, I usually do take the time to clean all this stuff off because you don't know where it's been. So this diesel's 97. So I'd say that you would probably say, oh, well, this kid went and bought stuff in 97. Honestly, I'm thinking 98 or 99 because this stuff would sit there was an incredible amount of surplus of Thomas Wooden Railway back in the day. So some of this stuff probably sat on the shelves. So parents were probably buying this stuff like a year or two later. Let's see. So we have one more cool car, probably a Hot Wheels. Yep. Don't need that. I saw this was kind of interesting. Sports Illustrated, pitch and catch baseball, some type of tip thing. So this is instructions to a completely different toy. Yeah. Again, that happens on Facebook quite a bit. So one thing you're probably wondering is where the heck is the Flying Scotsman? And this is actually what prompted me to make this video. Because when I went and picked this up, I don't sit there and I don't go through everything and I'm not like, well, there's 20 items at $2 each, blah, blah, blah. Like, it is kind of, Facebook Marketplace is kind of like a take it or leave it thing. And I usually try to be on top of this stuff because if it is a good deal, it will sell quickly. So when I went and picked this up, I was looking for the main things. I made sure there was Henry's Tunnel, and I thought I saw Flying Scotsman in there, but what I actually saw, I think what I saw was Henry. And if you notice in that picture, Henry is sitting on top with the Flying Scotsman. And so I saw the 2 tenders, and I saw another green engine, and I was like, okay, Flying Scotsman's there. But then when I got home and I was digging through this stuff, again, which prompted this video, I couldn't find the Flying Scotsman bodies. So I reached out to the seller, and it was a little bit complicated. I was actually not talking to the seller. I was talking to like a broker person who was selling this stuff on behalf of the seller because they were moving houses, whatever. And, it was kind of weird, like, hey, everything's here except like this one train. And I kind of had to explain, I'm like, this train is part of a pack. It was included in the picture. I wasn't aggressive or anything like that. I was trying to be very understanding. Like, I was thinking it was probably just a simple miscommunication. So the person I was talking to was like, oh, well, we did have, somebody else did come and look at the set or the stuff before you got there. It was a little out of their price range, but it's probably like potentially one of the kids there, took the toy by mistake. And I was like, oh, great. Fortunately, though, like a day later, they did find the body to the Flying Scotsman. The only problem, this was like 45 minutes away, so having to drive back out there kind of sucked. But in the scheme of things, to have a complete Flying Scotsman set, very, very much worth it. So that is the first time that's ever happened. Well, I shouldn't say the first time. I have bought stuff in the past, and again, 1 or 2 things is missing, but it's not worth like crying a river about. You just kind of like, dang it. Like, I mean, if you wanted to, like if I sold something to somebody and there was something included in the listing that wasn't given to them, I would do my best, I would think, to make it right. I usually, as a buyer though, I don't raise any issues because it's not worth it. But this was this was one of the big things I was interested in. Fortunately, they were able to find it. So there is the Flying Scotsman. And last but not least, we have some Brio stuff, which I don't care about. Another of these battery-powered trains, President Washington. I see these on eBay all the time. I don't really care if it works. I didn't buy this set for that purpose. Some type of hedge that may be from a Brio line. That's interesting. And then this is a Thomas Wooden Railway Railroad Crossing, 94. I'm keeping this. I keep all the signs. I have dozens of them. Here is that cargo car I was talking about. Pretty cool. just because it goes with the white cargo car. And last but not least, in this box, we have a flat piece of Lego. Not super interested in keeping this. That's probably going in the trash. All right, so no real major surprises in that box, but this is one of the track boxes, and I have not gone through this as well as the train thing. Obviously, I was more preoccupied with the missing Flying Scotsman, but now let's take a look at what else is included in this lot. One thing I want to bring up is I love these stickers on the side of these bins. This reminds me, I used to have the same sticker packs as a kid, and believe it or not, you used to be able to go to the grocery store or drugstore or whatever, and kind of near the greeting cards section there would be sections for stickers like these, and stickers still exist, but I think it's more of like an Amazon thing. So this takes me back, and honestly, I think we may have cracked something here. I'm seeing a number of Oliver stickers, and there were 2 Olivers in that other box, and that is making me think that at least one of the kids that the toys belonged to, maybe Oliver was their favorite character or something. But I just wanted to bring attention to this. This takes me back. I love the classic look of all these stickers and all the way around too. So this is before the Steam team, so we do have some interesting characters featured, such as Mavis and Oliver. So anyway, let's talk about what else was included in this lot. So I mentioned from the pictures it looked like the majority of this track was clickety-clack, and I think that'll still be the case, but we are going to see some Brio or generic track as well. So I'll try to go through this at a quicker pace than I did the train. Some of this track is going to have a little bit of wear and tear on it, I think. I'll go through this a little bit quicker, or I'll go through this off screen in a little bit more detail if I want to keep it. The thing with wood though, is once it gets wet, you know, let's just say if it was kept in an open bin like this and the basement leaked or something, you don't really know what's going to get on it. I have a feeling that that is mold right there, which is not great. But I'm hoping that some of this clickety-clack track is salvageable. That might be some mold there. This just looks like paint or something. So I'm just going to divide it up. It really, in terms of whether I keep this generic track, is kind of hit or miss. It kind of depends on the condition. Looks like this switch at one point might have been broken or cracked. Looks like they fixed it, but there is still a chip right there. So it's still usable by all accounts, because if I grab a piece of track here, I think you're just going to be able to see the broken piece a little bit more, which is not too uncommon. So I'll be keeping this switch and this track. It's funny, I mentioned how, you know, when track gets wet, you know, it never dries the same. You can kind of tell when track has been in water, either briefly or for a long period of time. And so it'll just have like a rougher feeling to it. It won't be as soft as it was before. So we have some, I forget the technical term for these off the top of my head, but I'll throw up a picture here. They're like these risers that you can assemble. And this stuff, I noticed this with some of these are official Thomas Wooden Railway risers, but they have this sticky stuff on them. And I'm wondering if this was part of like a play table, and the parents maybe had an issue with the track staying to the risers, that they'd come apart pretty easily. So this is not great by any means. And the problem is even once you peel it off, there's still a lot of sticky stuff under there. So, and I'm not really sure, that ground stuff doesn't look great either. And then there's even sticky stuff on the side here. So I really like to keep these risers. Again, I don't think you can ever have too many of these, but this riser is not giving me great confidence in terms of keeping it, and obviously I don't want a bunch of products with mold in the place where I live. So TBD on this. Maybe it's something I could give to a friend or something that, you know, it's destined for a hard life after this. Like it'll be built as part of a set and blown up or something. So it could still get some life, but it doesn't necessarily go in the trash right away. I think this kind of dirty stuff I was seeing underneath, I think that is this stuff right here. Like imagine if that sat on top. I'm just guessing because it's pretty consistent across some of the track pieces I've looked at so far. This is probably one of the better ones, but you can see like a distinct line right there. That's what I'm thinking. So at one point, maybe this, all this track was kind of grouped together or stuck together. Again, this is not a wooden railway riser. You can tell a official Thomas Wooden Railway riser. It is thicker than the usual risers and also has these grooves or edges on the side. So this is like a Brio riser. Sadly, I'm not being instilled with too much confidence with this track. I was hopeful with the risers, but that sticky stuff off the top, and you know, I've shown it even as I have peeled it off, tried to peel it off, it's not really coming off. So same thing with this. This started the discussion. You're supposed to be able to assemble these. I don't see any of the other pieces. Well, here's some. You're kind of supposed to build little risers. You can build them as tall as however many pieces you have, but this is the thing, is I'd love to keep this piece. I'm just not a fan of that tape right there. Again, some stuff on that. Again, it's kind of hard to tell if it's just like tape residue, which really isn't that, it's not harmful at all, other than it's more of an aesthetic thing. You just prefer not to have it. But then there's sometimes you just have to wonder. So here's another one. See, that's just kind of nasty. Like, you know, it wouldn't hurt anything if I kept it, but you know, I like to keep things that are in decent condition. So this is a riser. It does not feel like it ever had tape on it, but it's not a Thomas Wooden Railway riser, unfortunately. Yeah, so you can see something sticking up there. I hope that's just tape or maybe a feather from a pillow or something. So this is one of the fun parts about going through people's old junk, is you don't really know what you're gonna get until you dive into it. And honestly, I wish I had started this video series. This is actually a switch in good condition. I have this thing though, I'm just not a fan of non-Thomas Wooden Railway switches. I don't know what it is. They're a little bit, sometimes the proportions can be out of whack. If you're building a layout, they can mess with where the track connects. So this is definitely probably a resell in a group of generic track, but I thought I'd bring that up because this is actually probably the nicest piece of track I've come across. What was I saying? I was talking about, you know, this is part of the issue, maybe one of the downsides of going through people's old junk, because people treat stuff differently than you would treat it. This is also extremely common. Here's a Thomas Wooden Railway top tip. If you are buying, you know, stuff off of Facebook Marketplace and one of your interests is potentially the track, I would definitely give it a look over before you purchase, because kids like to draw on stuff. I think if the trains are drawn on or they're really damaged, the seller will make note, but then the seller, I mean, just think if you're a parent, you're like, oh, well, the track's just kind of expendable and whatever. But, you know, like we as collectors, if you're really into Thomas Wooden Railway, this clickety-clack track would be awesome to keep. I'll probably keep this, but it's worth noting this one has like a little bit, it looks like somebody took like a blue pen or something like that. You show it this way, you know, you'll never know, but buying secondhand track off of Facebook Marketplace, like exclusively track, oh my goodness. I think this is actually the part of the plastic roof or the cover that was supposed to be on that. That's a little bit hit or miss. I would not recommend that. I'll talk more about that in a sec, but here's one of those plastic kind of tower pieces. This one in great shape, actually. And I don't think that's anything to be concerned about. I think that's just the wood that was cut. So glimpses of good stuff here and there. But yeah, like if you're, honestly, like if you ever come across a Facebook Marketplace lot and it's like a bunch of track, and unless it's like a really good deal and you simply just do not care what condition it's in, I would maybe steer away from that, because I think there's just too many risks associated with that. Or I would make it very clear to the seller early on that, hey, I'm interested in the track and I am looking for it to be in a certain condition, and I can't really tell that condition from the pictures you provided. Could you provide me with better pictures? Or, you know, would it be possible? I mean, there's nothing saying like when you go pick up an item, you have to buy it. You know, I think if you set expectations properly and you say something like, hey, like I'm interested in this item, but I need to look at it in person. Think of if you were like selling a car on Facebook Marketplace, which is what people do. You know, think if you were doing something like that, you know, you would obviously not like okay, I commit to buying this item sight unseen, which is what kind of buying toys is like, because parents are usually, I'd say oblivious is not the right word, but they are just not, they just don't look at the details as closely as like someone like myself or other people in the community. Here's a different type of riser. It has something attached to it. Yummy. This appears to be in good shape. I see the top here. We need the bottom plastic piece, but this is worth keeping. Something a little bit sticky somewhere, like on the side there. Yeah, so it's like, I don't know, like, yeah, I mean, I feel like I got my money's worth based on the trains alone, so that's why I'm not, like, freaking the heck out. Like, oh, man, like, I was gonna resell all this stuff. I always keep buffers. Oh, is this a breakaway buffer? Well, well, well. I have always wanted one of these. This is awesome. Okay, so the breakaway buffer was sold in 2 packs, I believe. It was sold in a Thomas Comes to Breakfast pack with the house from the episode Thomas Comes to Breakfast, and then it was also sold in the Percy Takes the Plunge set, which I did a review on like 5 years ago, and I made a point saying I did not have the buffer. This is a normal buffer, except it just doesn't have the hooks that would clamp around the metal or the male insert there. So the track, imagine if you have a train running along and they hit the buffer is just going to slide away. Super awesome find. This is why we do Facebook Marketplace, is for stuff like this. I don't really care about the condition. That's a chip, by the way. Not anything else, but this is why we do Facebook Marketplace. Again, like, who knows, maybe if I go back and look at those pictures, this is sitting right on top, I should have noticed it, but this is the type of stuff that you don't know if you'll find or not unless you go and purchase this stuff, or at least look at it at the bare minimum. So that's pretty cool. In terms of this generic track, what I end up doing with it, if I don't keep it, is if it's in terrible condition, like to the point where I'm not really interested in giving it to somebody else, like I kind of feel bad, like, oh dang, like this is really awful, I'll just throw it away or recycle it. I actually don't know if I tend to throw wood in the recycle bin where I live. I don't know if that's a big yay or nay. To me, I think you would be able to recycle wood stuff. Maybe it's a special thing I should look into. Or if that's if the condition is really horrible and I don't want to make somebody else carry the burden that I have been given, or I will just donate it. And that's the thing is, make its life continue on. Don't send it to a landfill or whatever right away. But it's not really something I have an interest in keeping. Yeah, see some of this. So here's the thing with these risers, is based on the sticky stuff up top, I am actually leaning towards like throwing these away. And this is part of, gosh, they remind me of Band-Aids, and that just invokes a very gross thought in your head, like somebody else's Band-Aid. Ew. So I'm actually leaning towards probably just getting rid of these risers. If they didn't have the sticky stuff up top, I would be more... I would be thinking more along the lines of preservation. Yeah, just some of this stuff. I'm actually surprised at the number of lots that I buy that have these risers. These are Thomas Wooden Railway sanctioned risers. The idea is that you could build like a gradual incline versus using an ascending piece of track, and I'm surprised at how many of these I get. Apparently they were decently popular back in the day. So I think for there are a few risers that you've seen that don't have the sticky stuff up top. Those are not headed to the trash can. I likely won't keep them. I've never been a fan of non-Thomas Wooden Railway risers, and this actually started when I was making my Wooden Railway series, and for a while I was like, oh heck yeah, buy these off-brand risers for used on eBay and stuff. But they do not cover the same amount of surface area at the top as a Thomas Wooden Railway riser. And that's actually very important because, even if you were to build on a solid play table like this track is going to shift. And so the more area that your track can lean on there is great. The official Thomas Wooden Railway riser is a lot bigger, and the track seems to stay in place a lot better. So I am personally not a fan of risers, off-brand risers, or just Brio risers. I don't think any of this stuff is technically off-brand. It is Brio, but I tend to use the term generic. Because unless you really know your wooden railway stuff, which I don't outside of Thomas Wooden Railway, they're all gonna look the same. So this bin as well is just very dirty. So all of this stuff, if I end up keeping it, is worthy of a wipe down of some sort, which I usually just use like a clean paper towel. I think this is one of the first bigger pieces of Brio track I've seen. For the sake of this video, I don't think I'm going to take the rest of this stuff out. So here's another one of those. We have one already, but not the other piece. So interesting. We don't have the plastic bases, but yeah, for the sake of this video, I'm going to keep this stop sign. That's something that I'll keep. But for the sake of this video, because a lot of after I turn the camera off and get ready for our next section, this is all going back in the same bin for right now. Some of this stuff is worth keeping. I don't know. It's definitely not to my preferred status, let's say. And then look, even one of these Thomas Wooden Railway gradual risers, as I call it, has the sticky stuff. So basically anything with the sticky stuff I'm not keeping, and I don't feel great giving it to somebody else. And then there's a question as like, just like that stuff, like I'm no mold expert, but it makes you question. So guys, the track, a little bit of a miss. I think there are some pieces here worth keeping. For example, like this piece of track looks really, really great, actually. Anything generic, though, is low on my priority list to begin with, and if it's in any type of bad condition, it's probably being donated or thrown away. Alrighty, we got one more small bin to look into, and strangely enough, this is the one that didn't. This is the only one that came with a roof, or a cover, a lid, I should say. So more track here. I'm gonna try to roll through this. So it looks like we're not done with the clickety-clack track, which is great. With the exception of that front part there. Again, I just cannot tell what that is. Pretty good condition. Like honest, like some of this track. I mean, you know, you heard the saying, "Dog ate the homework." Well, dog chewed the track as well. Honestly, like. I'm not actually that concerned about that. It's more of an aesthetic thing. I really think that's part of the tape that's been there. But I also, now that I look at it closer, I'm also like, well, that tape could be festering some, let's just say, diseasels. So yeah, kind of split on the track here. Yeah, some of this stuff I'm not a huge fan of. Honestly, my gut instinct is to maybe get rid of it just to be safe. This looks pretty good though. This is an official Brio T-switch. It's different than the Thomas one because it has one male end, and yeah, if you don't care about the looks of the bottom, it's actually okay. So we're gonna fly through this Brio track. So here's where all the ascending track lives actually. I wonder if it was actually organized at some point. Yeah, this, I've said it before, but every piece I pick up, this track just does not instill me with a great amount of confidence. Can't wait to wash my hands after we're done with this. So here's another. I said we were missing the plastic bases. They may be in here. Looks like we got something right here. So another. These are great. These all appear to be in good shape. Dated 1999, in case you're wondering, which matches up with the rest here. So we had the like the last third of this bridge and the other thing. This might be worth, I wouldn't say reselling, but definitely worth donating. Appears there's, yeah, I actually wouldn't sell it because there's a big crack at the top that looks like it's been glued, which is probably where that discoloration comes from. So definitely worth donating. It's got some life in it, and it's a pretty sturdy piece. Again, I don't really care for Brio switches. When I was building layouts once upon a time, they were just kind of difficult to use. So here is a great example. You'll likely run into track that is broken. And for something like this, I mean, this is pretty useless. I mean, unless you stick it like that. But again, think of it as that breakaway buffer. As soon as any sort of tension is put on this track, it is going to break apart. This is not worth keeping in my books. This is straight to the trash. Might be worth trying to do something with these ascending pieces of track. Again, a similar story with switches. I don't like non-Thomas ascending switches, or ascending track, excuse me. They are a lot longer than Thomas ones. In fact, I might be able to do a little bit of a demonstration here for those who are not aware. Again, it just affects how stuff fits on a layout. So that's really tiny. That's not great. They're roughly at the same height too, but the Brio ones are just a tiny bit longer. Which again, when you're building the layout, you just kind of, years of building layouts, you notice stuff like that, and you're like, oh, maybe I should. So this is one of the more disgusting pieces of track I have come across, and it sucks because it is a beautiful clickety-clack piece up top, and then it just has, I mean, to me, that looks like something that should not be there, and, yeah, like, I don't know. I'm honestly, as wasteful as it seems, I'm kind of tempted to put all this track out of its misery. Because, I mean, what am I supposed to do with it? Because I've kind of come to the conclusion that I don't want to keep it. Because I feel like it might... This is a great switch, by the way. That track that has stuff growing on it it's probably not great to keep around you for a long period of time. But then it feels very... what's the word? Like, it doesn't feel very nice to give it to somebody else and be like, okay, well, this problem's yours. But then it's like, I do know there'd be people out there that would be like, oh, I don't care what condition clickety-clack track is in, I would like to have it. So I'm sure regardless of which decision I choose, there's probably going to be some pushback either way. So they must have they probably had that 4-pack of signals at some point. These are all in really good shape. The ones I grew up with, my cats took a chewing to the top there. So, yeah, these are great. This is actually a great find, too. I'll be keeping these because never have too many of those. So, yeah, I feel kind of guilty because I'm thinking, like, no matter what I do, people are probably not going to be super happy with my decision. But, again, I just don't... I don't feel... And it's like, why, like, even if it was possible... like send this stuff to a lab for examination, like no, like that's kind of ridiculous. So yeah, see, that's like I'm not a germaphobe, but that is one of the things when you buy Thomas stuff is you get, that's a crayon, by the way, that's not something to be concerned about. When you buy people's secondhand stuff, sometimes you get their you get their lives with it. So Brio tree, another one of these things, which I'll keep because it doesn't have the sticky stuff. A school sign, which I will keep, dated 94, probably goes with those other signs. So funny, we got a couple of these, I call them the top parts of those risers that you put together, but no bases. That's really funny. So they probably bought that pack that you buy, you get 2 tall ones and 2 short ones. I bet that's what they bought that at one point, but they just do not have the bases anymore. As of the making of this video, I am tempted to get rid of all this track, as in dispose of it. That is my gut feeling, because there's kind of some yucky stuff in there, and I don't feel the need to keep it, as in like I need to keep the track in order to make it worth my money, because I feel like, as we're going to see here in just a second, there's a couple other destinations that I've yet to take a look at, plus all of the trains that I saw. So my gut instinct is to get rid of the track that has any type of, let's just call it for what it is, looks to be mold on it, and not donate it so that I do not afflict anybody else. I know that's a boring and probably not a popular answer, but it feels like the right thing to do. All right, we have a couple more items to review from that listing. The roundhouse that I had on the table earlier was simply just to prop those boxes up that I was showing off. But this is the actual roundhouse that was included in the listing. And I have not taken a close look at this type of stuff yet, just because I was more focused on the trains and the missing Flying Scotsman. So there are some surprises here. I wish I would have taken a little bit of a closer look, but if you can see at the top, really it's almost like a crown here. There is a scratch. You can feel it with your fingernail. A smaller one up there. Personally, not the biggest deal. If I flip it the other way, I thought there was, there's one right there. You can kind of see it. So, not the end of the world. by any means. You know, this stuff is definitely used. I kind of I'm wishing now that maybe I had taken a closer look at the pictures. And, you know, with the track issue that I've had, you know, I think there's been a few disappointments, but I will probably resell this, but knock quite a bit of money off just because it has that big scratch there. Honestly, if you're looking, you know, for if you've never had a roundhouse, you're looking for a shed, this isn't a bad one. It's a little bit dusty as well, and there was a paint mark right about there. Not terrible by any means, but I kind of wish I would have noticed that a little bit earlier in the process, but still not terrible. I have the other stuff in a box here. Here's the turntable, and looking at it really quickly, yeah, looks to be in better condition. There's some marks down here. I think that is in the grain of the wood, however, and then underneath looks really good, actually. So I would say the turntable is in better shape than the roundhouse, actually. I might actually split this turntable up and sell it with a better conditioned roundhouse to try to get some more money, and then this is kind of a leftover thing. I'm a big fan of this style of turntable, and it's not that I don't like the plastic red one either, but there's something very much more wooden railway-esque when you use wood as much as possible versus the plastic. So, but this maybe was probably an expensive piece to produce back in the day because you needed this whole wood section there. But the turntable actually looks really great, and then let me show it to you what it looks like put together. The camera angle is not the most flattering. I would have it higher if possible, but really, really nice. And I was going to look for an official date. I'm guessing it's 1997. That appears to be a very common date that we've had across a lot of the items. Well, I thought there was a date usually on the side, you know, kind of in a corner or something, but I'm not actually seeing one, which is a bit unfortunate. Maybe underneath, did I miss it? I don't see anything there, so maybe it's not dated. Well, here we go. It's right in front of me. On all of the doors, if it will focus, 97, there we go. I probably saw that subconsciously and thinking I'm a genius. And then this is probably the same BA Britt Alcroft, 97, if you can see it there. Boom. Very nice. So that was another big thing I wanted to take a look at. We have a couple more destinations. The one that everybody has probably been waiting for is the Henry's Tunnel, and here it is. I have some very exciting news. Well, I'll just jump right into it. So this piece, you know, is always hit or miss. If you buy a Henry's Tunnel secondhand and they don't have this brick wall, it's not something to really be upset about. Like I said, it's a small, or like I've alluded to with other pieces, such as, you know, the roundhouse, or excuse me, the turntable sides. You know, this is such a tiny piece; it can get lost really easily. It's not a surprise when the seller doesn't have this, but it's always a pleasure when they do. So looking at the pictures from that, from the listing, I could not see the brick anywhere, and that's because this was actually in one of the bins that we previously looked at. When I was doing my quick look through, I found this and immediately started jumping for joy. So for those who have never had a Henry's Tunnel, the way it works, you're supposed to reenact the episode, and you slide the little brick wall in there. And then, you know, there's no magnets or anything holding it in place, so it simply pops out. One thing I am noticing, I wonder if this toy was left in the sun. I'm going to flip it around and we'll see, but the red brick on the wall is a different shade than the rest of it. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe this whole toy was left out in the sun for a little bit, and then this was hidden away somewhere. Maybe maybe they're not even supposed to match. I'm not sure, but that's, to me, it's very obvious when you put the brick wall in. This is from the opposite side. We had it earlier. You can see way darker red than the outside. But remember from the picture in the listing, I said it looked like it was in really good condition, and it is. Sometimes you'll see some chipping along the side here, or I guess along the top, usually on the female end. The tunnel is unique because it is see-through. It's for the little hands to get in there. My hands are not so little anymore, so it's not super effective. And the date, we're looking at 1996. What's interesting, though, is when you think back to how this set was sold, there should have been a Sad Face Henry and a Natford Express coach and a couple of other things like some passengers, and I did not see those anywhere. So it makes me believe, again, I'm actually starting to lean more toward the idea that the people I bought this from were not the original owners. It was probably a hand-me-down or something like that. Maybe from a neighbor, maybe from a relative, something like that. That's just my theory. But it's awesome to have this with the brick wall as well. That's a very good find, and honestly, that redeems a lot of what I've seen. Some of the unfortunate miscalculations I've suffered in this video. But this is a pretty good find too. This is the cargo crane, and like I mentioned in the listing, I mean, the top pops off so easily. It just sits there. It's not very effective. This is a great little item, though. It's super easy to operate. It's one of those little hidden gems that you look at this item. If you've never had this item, you're like, so what? It's a crane. But first of all, I mean, this is just, it's simple and it's blocky, and it kind of looks more brio than wooden railway. I think nowadays, if they did a similar crane, think of like Cranky, this would all be plastic. You'd be able to stick your finger through. But this is just from another era of Thomas Wooden Railway, and it's a great era. I'd say the only bad thing about this item, like I mentioned, the top comes off extremely easy. So you'll see a bunch of these on eBay or locally, and they'll look exactly like this. And I don't know. I think at that point, I'd rather bust down these sides here and just use this track piece, because this would just be in the way. And the magnet, again, like I explained with the breakdown train, the magnet is just not very strong. They later increased the strength of the magnets, but that took a little while. So this crane is actually in great condition. You look around all around, it's almost like it didn't get a whole lot of use, and it's a nifty little thing. So I have one of these in the clickety-clack form, I believe. It's been a while, but this one is in far better condition than the one I took a look at, or the one that I originally had. So here's another, this is the rolling drawbridge or something like that. Don't quote me on that, but I mean, it looks like a drawbridge. So the test here with this destination has always been, one, if this knob is here to turn it, that's always kind of a miss. Sometimes this will pop off. You can kind of see how it pulls out, and I think if you applied enough strength, you could tear it off easily. But then does it actually engage with the mechanism to raise the bridge? And it looks like this one does, even if I were to, well, let's actually play with this like you're supposed to. So the stop sign comes up to stop any oncoming trains, and you turn the bridge, and you can see you have to kind of turn it all the way, and then I thought it would kind of click into place. There we go. But you can see gravity is also taking its hold there. So you turn it, and it kind of gets to a point where it likes to sit, and then maybe if you don't touch it, it'll stay up. But that's the fun part, because it not working the way it's supposed to, because kids are just going to use this as a way to crash and smash their engines, and that's okay. So I mentioned this in the beginning of the video. We got a missing stop sign here, which is totally normal. This one appears to be in there a little bit tighter, which is maybe why it survived. I wonder if... Ooh, that's really tight at the end there, actually. So anyway, we got one of the two stop signs. I call that a win. And then the green roof over here. I'm trying to figure out... I don't really want to mess with it. I moved it just a little bit there, and I kind of heard something sticky, which makes me believe... Oh yeah, you can see it under there. It's like it was glued on or something, or maybe one of those cursed double-sided pieces of tape we saw earlier on the risers. So that's actually not a bad thing. And again, in very good condition. It's like these destinations didn't get played with a whole lot. So I'm going to leave that as it is. I'm not going to mess with it. But the roof, usually flies off these things very early on, and you can never find them. So I'm going to call that, even though it's missing a stop sign, I'm going to call that a win too. That's a very good find. Interesting here, looking at this, I have not taken a look at this off screen. So here's a 5-way switch, which normally comes with the roundhouse. So the way, if this was not purchased in a set, which I don't believe it was, the roundhouse would have come with this 5-way switch, and then the roundabout action turntable would have been a separate purchase. So this has a little bit of wear and tear on it. Down here, again, this appears to be just the wood grain, nothing there. But some marks up here, which... again, that just, I guess that looks like wear and tear. I thought something had spilled, but I think this is just wear and tear, maybe a tiny spill. Looking at the back, though, okay, not bad, yeah. So, this probably got some use back in the day, and since this was one of the early versions of the roundhouse, it's hard to explain, but this 5-way switch was just built a little bit different. I think the grooves in the track here were a little bit more pronounced. Later on, it was a little bit more shallow across the whole thing, and you can kind of see their mock fake version of clickety-clack track all the way through here. I'm always amazed. This is always just a cool item to look at. And even if you don't pair it up with the roundhouse over there, if you want to connect the turntable to the roundhouse, this is just a great piece. If you watch my series over the years, this is just a great way to make a yard, or honestly you stick it anywhere on the layout, and it's just like, 5 tracks spreading off and going in different directions, and it's very, very cool. There's just a little bit of work here, which I don't think is too bad in the scheme of things, but something definitely rubbed up against this, I would say. And then one random thing I found at the end of the box is a knob here, and I don't remember us looking at an item that was missing one. Unless it was like a piece of track that I overlooked or something. Maybe somebody can correct me on that, but this was found at the bottom of the box. The last thing we're going to take a look at, if you remember from the early part of the video, was this Polar Express Christmas tree. This is not something I'm going to keep. And apparently it has batteries in it. TM and Warner Brothers Entertainment. So this has to do with the movie that was released in 2004. So again, a little bit not in the same era as the rest of the stuff we've looked at. Presumably you would press the button back here and maybe it would light up. Looks like we have some translucent lights there. After this video, I'll take a look. I presume there are batteries in this and they're just corroded beyond belief, so I don't think this thing is going to be worth saving. There was likely some type of feature where you would roll a train over the track and it would sense and maybe emit some type of noise or something like that. I don't see a speaker anywhere, however. But yeah, I've seen this on eBay over the years, and I was never into Brio, so this is not really a piece for me. However, well, what's interesting? I'm like, wait, this is a compass and it says south everywhere, but that's because you're at the North Pole. So I think no matter what direction you move, you're going south. I think that's the message there. The star would presumably light up. Anyway, what I was saying is I've seen this on eBay over the years, and by the time the Polar Express came out, I was a little bit older. I remember seeing it in theaters. But I don't think I was even interested in Thomas at that time, so it never really left like a profound impression on me. I grew up with the book, however, and I enjoyed how simple the book was, and they made a lot of changes to the movie because it had to become an hour-and-a-half movie versus a children's book, and so I was always kind of miffed at that. I always preferred the book to the movie, but I understand the movie is very important to people out there. So I will take a look and see if I can get this working. Otherwise, I mean, even if you're not a Thomas person, like this is a really great way of having a Christmas tree on a layout, or at least in your collection, because we really didn't get anything like this in Wooden Railway. We got the very big canvas style tree that came with a set many years ago. It's so big, it's outrageous. In fact, the size of that would probably be more accurate to the tree you are receiving here, which I think is part of my problem, because the tree in the movie is massive. And this, they can't, you argue they can't make a big tree, but then like that canvas tree that I just showed, like, well, they, you know, somebody can, maybe not the whole thing lights up, but they can make a bigger tree. And then the other Christmas trees we've received in Wooden Railway, they're just your normal trees. They're not anything special. So this is actually a unique size. If you don't mind the Polar Express North Pole branding all over it, I guess it's kind of a unique piece. So let me clear off the table. Let me bring everything back and we'll kind of have a final review. All right, and this is our final look at everything that was included in that lot. That I have taken a look at over the course of the first part of this video. Overall, not too bad. There were some surprises, and again, the whole issue with the Flying Scotsman was fortunately resolved. The roundhouse here is in great condition, except for this scratch right here. I'm less impressed with the track I received. I know that wasn't the huge focus anyway, but having gone through it, I'm gonna unfortunately have to say most of this is probably headed to the trash can or recycling. But we got some great destinations here. This crane is actually in fantastic condition, and so is this drawbridge, which is only missing one of the stop signs. The turntable here is great, and obviously I'm thrilled. We got a Henry's Tunnel here. And so overall, this was not a bad pick at all. From what I can tell, this was somebody's entire Thomas Wooden Railway collection growing up. Off screen, I went through and took these batteries out, and these are just very, very old. Like one of these is dated 2008, and I think like they're good past, like they make the batteries and then they put that date for like 10 years in the future as to like when they should be good. There was an Energizer battery here that had 2016 on it. So again, very ancient batteries that are well past their expiration date. This one has 2018 on it, I believe. So I did go ahead and put some batteries in these items. This one has a battery in it right now, and I believe it's supposed to be motorized due to the traction tires on the back wheels, but the only thing it's really doing is kind of hard to see under the studio lights. But there is a faint headlamp there that turns on and off, but it does not propel itself in any direction. So maybe half working, I guess. This one is a bit clever, as you see there. I thought you'd have to unscrew it from the bottom, but there are actually instructions saying do not remove this panel. What you do is you stick a screwdriver in the funnel, or as it calls it, the smokestack, and then this front piece pops off and you slide a battery in. So pretty creative there. And then both of these, they don't have batteries in them right now, but both of these are working forwards and reverse. They're dated like late 90s by Learning Curve, and honestly, this was probably the inspiration for the battery-powered Thomas trains we saw at around 2001, 2002, right about there. In fact, their bodies appear to be exactly the same. I've probably mixed them up by this point, but the shells just go on top, and to me, this is just an indication of, you know, what was to later come a few years down the road for Wooden Railway. One of the cool things I did is I put batteries in this Polar Express tree, and if you listen very closely, you'll kind of hear a sharp noise at first, and then it sounds a lot better. Let me find the button. Here we go. So it does light up. The tree actually lights up better off screen without the studio lights. But if I play that one more time, again, it's kind of like a shrill noise to begin with, and I can only imagine that the sound chip is, well, it's 20 years old, so probably hasn't been pressed in a while. But all of these items were, you know, technically dead before I put new batteries in them, and I like 3.5 out of the 4 still works. So that was a nice little surprise there. It's always worth taking the batteries out, and the batteries that came out of that were like the original, like off-brand knockoff batteries that I don't even remember the name of them. So those had been in there since it was produced, basically roughly 20 years ago. The only other thing I'll bring up is this turntable. When I was trying to turn it like freestyle, it works in one direction, and then you try to pull it in the other direction and it kind of stops, and I don't know if that's due to the the teeth underneath. I don't even know if that's like a legitimate issue or if I'm just not using it correctly, but you use the handle here and it works fine, but then, you know, most kids are impatient. They're just going to grab it with their hand. It turns to the right easily, as you can see, but then turning to the left, it like gets stuck and doesn't do anything. I don't think that's an issue with my specific version, but maybe that's one of the reasons why they moved away from the wood design. I know I have one of these turntables, but I never messed around with it long enough to actually figure out if that was an issue or not. So overall, I call this deal a success. There's a lot of great pieces I got from it, a lot of great engines. The track is, like I said, probably the disappointment, but that's always an option when you go into buying stuff like this. But overall, I'm very happy with what I got. And, you know, there weren't really any surprises outside of the Flying Scotsman being missing, which was resolved. So I have to say I'm pretty satisfied with this. All right, friends, for my next listing, I have a bit of a confession to make. I don't have any pictures of when this lot was on Facebook, and that's because, one, I didn't decide to do this video series until very recently, and like I've mentioned before, I have a bit of a backlog with some items. And two, I went back to look at my messages with the seller, and I think sometimes if a seller marks a listing as sold or whatever, it will actually get rid of all of the previous information. It won't get rid of the messages, but it will get rid of the pictures and the details and stuff, and that includes the price. So unfortunately, I'm kind of going into this area of the video a little bit blind. There's actually two parts to this. There's this bag here, and then some of you will recognize this. I guess it's a Thomas and Friends carrying case is the best way to put it, but it's a wooden railway carrying case, and I do have one of those way up there. That is actually something that I got from a Facebook lot a long time ago, and just by looking at this, I think the one I have upstairs is a little bit in better condition than this one, but this one is packed to the brim, and honestly, because I wasn't able to go back and look at the pictures, I really can't even remember what this listing has. So there's this bag here with the name of a bank that I don't think exists anymore. We'll dig through this first because I think there's less in here. I want to guess and say this is just kind of generic Thomas stuff from like late 90s, early 2000s. I don't think there was like a real kicker in here or anything. So there's a diesel 10 right out the bag, literally right out the bag. There's a whistle. Ew, I don't like touching these things because who knows where it's been. So that's going straight in the trash. Let me actually be very gentle. Okay, so we have a better view of what's going on here. Okay, so I do vaguely remember this. There's a piece of hair right there, actually a very long piece of hair. I tried to pull on it and it didn't do anything. Again, one of the weirder parts of going through people's stuff. I do remember there were a couple of interesting items in this lot that I think I was not necessarily after, but just kind of piqued my interest. And one of them was this 2001 James with the gold dome. And for those who don't know, James looked like this for a number of years, not with the gold dome. And then in 2002, he got his, what I would say almost his like classic look, or probably the look he's most known for in Wooden Railway, because he looked like that for nearly 10 years. But for 1 year in 2001, he had this old body, but for some reason, I think they were like, oh shoot, did you know James has a gold dome? So they gave him a gold dome for 1 year, exactly. So it is dated 2001 on the bottom, and it's definitely like a collector's piece. It's just one of kind of those random things like, oh yeah, for 1 year, James had like this something a little bit different about him. But other than that, you know, even the tender's the same. Like if you just wanted, and what I used to call an old style James being like, honestly, like 92 to 2001, any of the Jameses from that era will work, but there is a slight variation. There's a gold dome on this one. I think the rest of this stuff, nothing really to write home about. I mean, there's always a Thomas, usually in pretty beat up condition. I mentioned that I do like to keep the Sodor line cabooses. Something with this diesel 10 I just noticed. I thought this was some type of marking on the bat. I thought I said DJ. I don't know. I guess I think I'm making that up, but I don't know if that it does not come across as like sticky or anything. Maybe I'll try with a rag and get that off. And actually, now I'm seeing it looks like orange marker on the side all the way down. Actually, I did not notice that before. So this Diesel 10 was very well loved. Probably to the point where I'm not going to resell him individually. This is probably just like a giveaway type of thing because he has some extra paint on him, let's say. So Diesel 10 is probably not a keeper. One of the other items that caught my attention was this silver Percy. Now this item is by no means rare. But it is certainly unique, and not every one of these lots that you come across has it, and it's actually in decent condition. I think I was gonna say the gold Thomas and the bronze Diesel, from this series, they always seem to have chips on them. It's very, very rare that you come across one in mint condition. I would not call this one mint. It's definitely used, but I don't know if it was the type of paint that they used or it almost feels like, I mean, I'm no expert, but it almost feels like they kind of went away from like the clear coat protection that was maybe common a little bit later. I don't know if that was a thing during this time, but the point I'm trying to make is the gold Thomas, the silver Percy, and the bronze Diesel always have chips on them. And I mean, the face is even chip. You can see a little bit of wear on that face there as well. So that was something that caught my attention. Looks like generic fuel tanker with appears to be a red mark. I thought that was a chip, but that's a red mark. So maybe a little bit of maybe a red pen came to play there. Sir Handle's kind of interesting because this is like a 2008 item, if I'm not mistaken. So a little bit later than some of the items like we saw early 2000s. I mean, Diesel 10 would be early 2000s, and the Thomas, and I think I see Lady in the background. So a little bit of an oddball there. Sir Handle has some wear. Percy, name on the bottom, so we're guessing 2001. Yep, a little bit of wear there. Here's another Lady. I think the one in the previous part of the video, it definitely was in better condition. Oh yeah, around the side here. For some reason, got a bunch of wear on that one side. That's really interesting. I wonder if it sat on its side and got brushed against the ground or something. Toby, I don't know if the camera will pick this up, but this Toby is very, very dark brown. Like very dark brown. Again, just what's coming to mind here. 2001, okay. So with the addition of Lady and Diesel 10 here, kind of makes sense. 2001 is, yeah, that checks out for the rest of these engines. We got a Mavis, decent condition. Okay, so we got I was going to call it a roll and whistle Percy. That's later. This is a Sights and Sounds Percy. I believe this is like a 2005, 2006 item, I want to say. The wheels are going to say 2003 for those who are uninitiated. For some reason, after 2003, Learning Curve, who made the toys at the time, just stopped updating the date. So if you ever find a Thomas Wooden Railway toy with 2003 or later, when the Mattel made the items, it'd be 2012. It's not like, wow, they made millions and millions of toys this one year. It's just how it was. It's a bit frustrating as a collector, but not the biggest deal. So I'm actually probably going to keep this Percy because I don't believe I have one outside of the box. I remember seeing these in stores when I first started my YouTube channel back in 2008. These were definitely on the shelves, but I could never just, I could never, I'm trying to think of the right word, like reason with myself and be like, why should I spend $15 on this Percy when I could spend like $15 on like Harvey or a completely new character that I don't have? I'll go on record and say I've never been a fan of all these extra variants of characters. I've never come across one and been like, yep, that's a definitive version of Percy, even though this Percy has some unique features. It's got some coupling detail and some buffers. The back does not, because the back is plastic, which always bugged me. They try to do this good job of like seamlessly putting the two pieces together. I always thought it was a bit awkward. Some of them, I've seen versions of Thomas where the blue they used on the plastic is like a different shade than on the wood, and it's like very clearly, obviously two different parts. So off screen, I will come in here with the battery and take it out and see if I can get Percy working. It probably takes like those button batteries, the really tiny like cell ones. But I don't think I have one of these outside of the box, so I'll actually be keeping this one, even though it's in a little bit of a rough shape. Oh, well, that piece on his face just came off. And I was never a fan how the eyes looked towards the lamp in the corner. The lamp was cool. I could excuse that, but I never liked how the eyes looked down. And so those couple of things that I just mentioned I was always like, I'm not really willing to touch these variants. Here is basically a 2003 Gordon. It's got the eyebrows rubbed off, which is not surprising. That's pretty common for toys of this era. And the tender, okay, and then I think I have like an animal car or a zoo car with no name on the bottom, actually. So we're looking at 98, I believe, is the date on there. So again, a little bit of a random outlier. There's about 10 years between these two items here, so I'd have to think maybe multiple generations of children were playing with this. And Duncan, which is in pretty good shape, probably the best condition item that I've looked at out of this initial pack so far. Not bad. Duncan, never had Duncan as a kid, and when I started my YouTube channel, Duncan was one of the first engines I got because he always stood out to me. Whenever I saw him in the yearbooks or the pamphlets, I was like, man, I don't have Duncan. He's yellow and he's bright and he's rubbing it in my face that I don't have him. And now, like, Duncan's just so, like, nonchalantly a character. Okay, so here's a 2003 Thomas. So we had the two versions of Thomas here. That are just a couple years apart, actually. There's a 2002 version of Thomas in this body style, but it does not have the red stripes across the boiler. And Thomas is in pretty good nick, I would say. Not terrible there. So I'm going to move all of these items to the side because if you remember, like 2 minutes ago, I showed off this, and it is pretty full of stuff. I honestly, I'm guessing there's some track in here, maybe some destinations. It's a bit interesting. Well, I was about to say it's a bit interesting. Why would you put some trains in the bag that I just unboxed, and not stick them in here? But you can tell this is like filled to the brim. So I bet we will actually see some more trains. But I am as completely as lost as you are because I can't remember what was in here. So let me, I'll show you what it looks like from above. So it looks to be mostly track so far, but that's clickety-clack track, and we like that. So there's not really, I don't want to dump this out in case there's gross stuff at the bottom, so bear with me. I'm going to take this out bit by bit. 5-way switch in really good condition, actually. A scuff on the bottom, but that's like nothing. So compared to the track we looked at earlier, this is in really good shape. That is just a scuff there, a few, having some flashback. So this is looking very promising. We have some clickety-clack track here that, man, isn't it fascinating? Just the type of, you know, it sometimes the wood would just vary so much between, I guess, like one section of timber that they got and whatever. I'm gonna fly through this. So there's at least 2 archstone bridges in here. Here's one, which these are a dime a dozen, I think. Oh, I see. So for those who don't know, a little side note, because this piece just came off my play table here. This is the play table I've had since I was a kid. And even when I was, there was a protective film across the top, and mine started to peel like way back in the day. And once in a while it'll kind of rear up, but I was trying to remember if that fell out of the bag or something. But anyway, here's an archstone bridge. One thing that's to note is if you're buying one of these or you're looking for a complete set, when they were sold, it was one male end and one female end. You know, sometimes you might run into something like this. And you just have to be aware because technically, I mean, you can get away with an adapter track, but I always like to just call that out. So this is really cool. It's in really good shape. But when it comes to secondhand Thomas stuff, these are like the most common destination I've seen. I think they were popular, sold individually, but then they were included in a bunch of sets as well. So it's like, yay, but I have 6 of those in the room next door that I am trying to sell. So it's kind of like it's not really a net gain is maybe the best best way to put it. I will bring out, we probably saw this from the overhead shot. I am blanking on the name of this item. I'll throw it up on screen here with a better picture. But fun fact, there was a clickety-clack version made and also a traction rail version. And I have at least, I grew up with one of these, and I think I have another one that came from a lot. But I don't think I've ever come across a traction rail one. And I think it was only sold for a couple of years, like introduced 2001, gotten rid of 2002. I noticed the end of this track piece looked very elongated, and you can kind of tell it sticks out way too far. So this makes me feel that the knob at the end here at one point came out, and maybe the seller took a hammer or something and tried to punch it back in and didn't get it in all the way. So I don't see that as a big deal. There's just a tiny gap there. It still holds onto the track just fine, but I noticed that. I was like, that looks really big and unusual. We have our second Archstone bridge. There it is, the abbreviated version, so it fits in the camera there. Let me see if I can show you this without it all falling out. So I am convinced that at this point we have seen all of our engines from this lot, and now we are just going through clickety-clack track. So we've seen a fair variety so far. I'm a big fan of the straight pieces of track, but these switches are great. And yeah, the track is in really good condition. I've yet to find a piece that sent shivers down my spine, because that was the case last time around. It was kind of like, you know, I was just assuming all the track was in bad condition until I had looked at it. So piece of hair there, yuck. Big yuck. It is what it is. So in terms of keeping this carrying case, I already have one. And I don't necessarily need another, because I don't even use the carrying case for its purpose. It's actually, as you saw, it is simply just a display piece at this point. It's pretty cool. I mean, it has Thomas, Percy, James, and Henry on it, which is just, it's definitely from an era. I'm surprised Gordon's not on there. Percy is normal, James is normal, but Henry, I mean, that's the thing. Like, Henry, for like a brief moment there, was actually kind of one of the heavy hitters in Wooden Railway. I have this big Thomas Wooden Railway chest that I'm blanking off the top of my head if it went to anything or if it was just like a thing that you bought. But surprisingly, the two engines featured on the front are Thomas and Henry. And like that, of course, would like never happen today. But even like back in that era, like honestly, like Gordon, I feel like would just be a much more like reasonable character over Henry. And then you'd probably put Thomas as your number one, of course. And then like heavy supporting characters would be James and Percy, or probably Percy and James in that order. There's a little bit of, man, I don't even want to think as to what that is. I think it's glue. Not the biggest thing in the world, but that's like the first thing that I've seen that is kind of weird. Now that I'm doing this series, I'm definitely like vacuuming this stuff off and cleaning it off screen when I have the moment. But this is just as it comes out of the bag here. So wow, there is a decent amount of Thomas stuff here. And I am struggling to remember. So what I do remember about this listing is that it was porch pickup, which is not unusual, but some people do like you to ring the doorbell and talk to them for a sec. But it was porch pickup, and that first bag was tied to this. And yeah, that's it. I guess there were no destinations included for some reason. I mean, you could count the Archstone Bridge as a destination. I really wouldn't, but you know, the insertion wherever it went is at the bottom of my track over here. The addition of the 5-way switch over here implies that there was a roundhouse featured here, because they never sold this piece by itself. It always came with a roundhouse. So this implies that there was a roundhouse, but looking at the track pieces in the very few destinations included, a major set really does not come to mind. And then I look at the engines included, And, you know, I see Duncan and I see Percy. I mean, I kind of see your usual suspects, Thomas, Gordon, whatever. I guess that James does not have a tender. I will bring that up. Gordon is the only other tender engine, and Gordon had a tender, but James did not. So this James is all by himself as of right now. So it's really hard to concoct like a picture or a history of where these items came from and what they were used for, and any other additions. Who knows? Maybe the seller sold off the bigger stuff, you know, a long time ago and kept the smaller stuff. Maybe the bigger stuff was kept in the wrong spot in the garage and it flooded and she threw them out. I have no idea. But now this, I have been jogged. My memory has that this was a porch pickup. So I didn't even talk to the person and they did not give me any information or clues as to any of this stuff. So, and I can't even remember what I paid for this stuff, but as you just saw, it's all clickety-clack. In fact, like there's nothing unbranded in this whole thing besides this. I might actually look at this. People moving people. I don't speak French, but probably the same thing. And I didn't even notice the Canadian flag or the maple leaf there. That is like the official Canada logo. So maybe VIA, maybe there's a story here. But in terms of me keeping this, absolutely not. But this is a little bit interesting. I'm glad I came back to this before moving on. But actually a really great lot. Everything appears to be in really good shape. The track honestly looks like it's hardly been used, minus that one piece with the glue on it. Yeah, like actually this is kind of a dream lot. You know, I got a couple trains that I'm going to keep. I'm going to keep all this track, but there are definitely some duplicates that I'm going to part with. All right, continuing on with some recent Facebook Marketplace pickups. Let me throw some pictures on the screen of our next lot. So it's pretty decent in size. There are 4 pictures here. The first one has a bunch of traction rail track. I see a few switches in there, ascending pieces of track. I don't see any road curves. I'm being fooled by all of the reverse straight pieces that have the road on the back. But I see a buffer up front there. And then kind of off to the side, we start to get a piece of, you know, some of the engines included. So right away, what immediately caught my eye based on the destinations that were included in this lot, this appears to be an Edward the Great set. And one of the big giveaways is the furniture car right there, also the overhead signal. Probably not the correct name for that, but you know what I mean. There is also, you can see a tired out expression Edward in the back there, and it's a little confusing because the tenders are all split up. And some other trains of note. There's a gold Thomas, I guess I would call that a metallic Percy, not a silver metallic Percy like we saw previously. And I mean, a yellow Sodor line caboose is not the most common thing either. Switching over to the next picture, you see the Duke and Duchess's coach, which again is another dead giveaway. But what's interesting is the Spencer included. Remember, Spencer should have that, you know, shocked expression on his face. At least the one that is included in the pictures here appears to just be a normal Spencer. So you have to wonder if that Spencer was lost or, you know, I mean, you really just have to kind of wonder about the story there. But then, you know, you kind of have your classic characters like there's a Thomas, a Henry, a Gordon. There's an Elizabeth, which is kind of cool. And then the back part of Elizabeth is missing in that picture, but it was actually present in a previous picture we looked at. And then the final image is kind of a funny one. You can see there's a cranky in the background with the top of the overhead signal on top of him, a wooden railway Sir Topham hat or riser, and also like a stop and go station featuring Sir Topham hat, which I know are pretty popular, but I don't think I've ever actually gotten one of those before. Actually, I should say that in the sense of I've gotten one and kept one. I do believe I picked one up somewhere along the line, but it was in really bad shape. And with Sir Topham hat's bright bald head on the top, and if there are any chips on it, it just doesn't look great. So overall, not a bad lot here. Let me show what this looked like. This was one of my quicker pickups. from the time it was listed to the time I actually went and got it. I thought it was a pretty good deal. It came in this very sturdy, super nice plastic bin. That's also kind of a fun part of doing all these Facebook pickups, is that people will sometimes give you some really nice stuff to put it in, and then sometimes they'll literally give you like a discarded Amazon box that's half falling apart. Looks like there might be some cards here. It says Station Celebration. I'm not familiar with that branding off the top of my head. We'll have to dive into that. So there's the plastic bin here, but then inside the bin, looks like all of the engines are in this really nice, actually, like canvas bag here. So one thing I did notice, I initially, when I purchased this, I looked at this really quick and was like, oh yeah, there's some good stuff in there, let's go get it. But after looking at the pictures a little bit more, I think some of this stuff is not going to be in the best condition, therefore it's probably not going to be like a slam dunk type of lot. But I still think there's going to be some cool stuff worth looking into. So a couple of the engines fell out here, but I think we'll just start with the engines. Again, totally basically sight unseen. Haven't done any digging or anything since I purchased this. So right away, we got a bunch of what I'm just going to call 2003 engines here in decent condition. I've always loved this Henry. This is the Henry that was used in the early seasons of my Thomas Wooden Railway series. Fergus in pretty good nick right there. A couple of scratches. Birdie, I mean, these are all kind of a dime a dozen. I would say, like I've said, late 90s, early 2000s was really the peak, or like the peak in popularity for Thomas Wooden Railway. So there were millions of these engines produced, but you'd have to think every year that goes on, they get a little bit, I wouldn't say rare, that's kind of a loaded word right there, but you know, they're maybe a little bit harder to find. So haven't really looked at anything super cool yet, but here's a Spencer. The one side of the tender has a little bit, I guess that's just like scratches or something, but they appear to have some color, so maybe a marker got into play there or something. Otherwise, you know, trains appear to be very well taken care of. What was interesting about this pickup, and I won't really talk about the people I'm picking stuff up from regularly, because it's not, I don't think it's super relevant, and I only really pick stuff up I'll only bring this up if it's, you know, relevant to what I'm about to say, which this time it is. The usual, like 95 to 98% of the people that I meet for this Facebook stuff, it is parents selling the stuff, and it was their kids. I have met some people, you know, early 20s, late 20s, early 30s, who had the toys as a kid and they were kind of sitting in a bin. But this one was a bit interesting. She was actually a girl, probably in her, I don't know, you know, she had the toys basically 20 years ago, I guess is what I'll say. But she was super, super nice. And I just thought that was interesting because, like I said, 99% of the people I interact with, it's parents who don't really understand the toys. So she kind of made a comment. She was like, yeah, I grew up with this stuff and it's been kind of sitting around and I want to get rid of it. One thing I didn't call out in that overview is the FOD cars. Cool. Still work. That's awesome. That's crazy. I mean, these batteries have been in there for 20 plus years at this point, still going strong. So, not that the fog cars are rare or anything, but the cool part is you're getting both here. You're getting the complete set, which is great. Sometimes you'll only get one or the other, and that's kind of the edge of the sword, I guess, when it comes to, you know, these 2-packs that were produced. You know, like, I'm probably not going to keep this. I already have a fog car pack, but it's like, well, if you want to resell it or whatever, like, most people are probably looking for the entire 2-pack, which again is just kind of throws things up in the air. Here is Elizabeth. Looks to be in pretty good shape. And then here is the back, which, like I said in that picture we saw, maybe I was gonna say looked like maybe these two areas were broken off and that's why it wasn't attaching. But I think those knobs are still there, and you could, it's a little bit tricky if you don't know what you're doing. But that appears to be a working Elizabeth. It's a little bit stiffer than the one that I've had for a long time. What the deal is there's a magnet in here that kind of like, you'll see it kind of click into place. You push it down and then it like kind of adheres. This one is just a little bit more like you have to apply a pretty good amount of resistance there to get it to click down. So I'm not surprised that that this came off in the first place. And then I thought this was a lever that you pulled back on the front here. But I guess that's supposed to be like a step, that yeah, I guess it doesn't move. I was thinking like there's some other type of character I'm thinking of where you slide and that maybe I was like, maybe that, oh, what I'm thinking of actually is you hit the roof here. Okay, so now I have obviously not really, messed around with Elizabeth, in many, many years on camera like this. So what you actually do is you press the roof here, you kind of see that indentation. And like, I actually don't know the science behind it, if it briefly, reverses the polarity of the magnet in there. I mean, at least it feels like a magnet. You feel the resistance. But anyway, going down a rabbit hole, Elizabeth is there. Here is the Duke and Duchess's coach, which is probably what most people are interested in from this set. So the Edward the Great set, this is something, if you watched my videos for a long, long time, and I'm guessing most people haven't, so brief refresher. The Edward the Great set was sold like mid 2000s, a little bit later. So let's say like, 2005, 2006, 2007, right around there. And so I did not grow up with the set, but when I was getting back into Thomas, and actually before I created my YouTube channel in 2008, this was one of the sets that I went out and bought. As I was getting back into it, I was still kind of testing the waters, and I thought it was a cool set. I had probably seen the episode like only once, but the thing that like really appealed to me was, like tried and true classic stuff such as special faces and exclusive, merchandise or rolling stock. I mean, that's really all you need for a set to be kind of cool. So this coach is, a fantastic coach. You can use it as Gordon's special coach in, I think it's Gordon and the Gremlin, I want to say, or I'm pretty sure it's also used in a better view for Gordon as well. But it's really just a fancy coach. When I was making my series, I had Duck and Oliver pulling them around sometimes because they kind of reminded me of the coaches on their branch line. It's really just a great, great item. Super glad to have another one. The furniture car here, I don't necessarily know that I'm going to keep this because while it is cool, it's pretty, like, I don't know. I think I'm looking behind and I'm looking over there actually, which is where some of my rolling stock sits, and I don't really see, I don't know, I'm guessing I only have one, but anyway, not sure if I'll keep this or not, but condition wise, in pretty good shape. Mavis here, I noticed this when I took it out, I saw it tumble out of the box. She has a little bit of like wear on her, so she got beat up somewhat. I can't really tell if that's paint or something. Honestly, kind of looks like glue like we saw on the track earlier. So I'm going to see if I can clean Mavis up here and see if I can maybe get some of these marks off, make her look a little bit better. So here's the one of the other exclusive items in the set is this Tired Out Expression Edward. I would say in the order of how much I appreciate the exclusive items. If you think of, there's four. There's the Edward, there's the Spencer, there's the furniture car, and then there's the coach. I would probably say the coach is number one for me, and then Edward would probably be number two. The furniture car is cool, but like in terms of like going out, I mean that was probably like $100 set back in the day, $100 plus. So like you're having to fork over a decent amount of money to get this stuff. So Edward appears to be in decent shape. It is a great Edward face, I will say. The eyebrows have a little bit of wear, but he's also got the rosy cheeks and maybe like a little bit. You can kind of see the point of his nose has changed color. I think that's just like a stress thing in the plastic. It was probably banged up a couple of times, but could be worse. And I don't believe, yeah, it's funny underneath, even though this is like a completely individual different Edward, underneath they did not bother to mark him any differently. So it's just Edward and Edward's tender. Like if you saw this in a lot, facing this way or facing this way, you would just assume that it's a regular Edward. It wouldn't be until you saw the face that you actually know that what you were getting into. So I think I skipped over a couple things, but like the James here, actually really good condition. I know that's like, there are better James faces out there, like in terms of like how he is as a character, but that's just a classic face. I mean, that's the thing, is these faces were around for almost 10 years. There's Emily, I think I kind of skipped over. So this person basically had like the entire Steam team. She had like the main group of characters here, which is pretty impressive. Here is a celebrating 60 years. The other Percy said silver Percy underneath, but most people just call this like the green metallic Percy. Not necessarily rare. One thing I did notice, and again I brought this up with the silver Percy, is I always felt like these items wore like really fast, or just in like kind of unusual ways. Not sure if it was the paint they were using. You know, you'll see these wheels chipped up a little bit. That kind of makes sense. You can even hear, like if I take another engine, for example, it's going to sound a bit different because we're dealing with 6 wheels versus 4. But you hear that sound, and then you hear... So like the wheels were maybe made out of some type of different material. It's not like they were just plastic wheels that were, you know, given like a shiny coat of paint. But that's one thing I always noticed was you can, in some people who used, I think it was Scarloey Railway 01, who was a Thomas Wooden Railway YouTuber. Most people, if you do know his channel or videos, probably remember him. He did like adaptions of the entirety of the Railway series. And from what I remember, he used this Percy, probably because it was the Percy he grew up with. But I remember him, you know, moving the trains along and stuff, and Percy hitting a corner or an edge and making that unique rattling sound. I don't think there is another engine out there that makes that sound quite like Percy. So it's a very unique sound. But anyway, yeah, the stuff in here is in really good condition. I always find it very weird to stumble upon a Tidmouth milk tanker with a name written on the bottom. And I mean, these were made for a couple years after they put the names on them, but like growing up in the late 90s, and I have a bunch of Tidmouth milk tankers, most of them do not have a name. So it's a little bit astonishing sometimes when I look at that stuff. One of the very strange items included in this lot is a take-along Coldie. Very, very random. Again, I wasn't about to, I remember seeing that in the picture, and I wasn't about to like ask the seller like, hey, so you have all this Wooden Railway stuff, but what's the story with this one thing? Like, they're just toys to these people, you know, they don't really remember, you know, the intricacies, but, you know, maybe this person had a, you know, take-along collection at some point, or, you know, who knows, maybe this was bought by a family member thinking it was compatible with Wooden Railway. Maybe she had a copy of the Railway series, wanted to do something with Coldie. Remember, Coldie was sold in the 90s, but then there was a gap there before. I think it was the 2005 re-release with the Apple Orchard cars. So I don't know, maybe she was a fan of Coldie, but couldn't find the Wooden Railway version easily online or anything like that. eBay was still kind of, I mean, compared to now, was in its infancy, so random thing there. And then we just have a generic black cargo car, which you see that yellow piece of cargo there. I bet that goes to that, and I bet it goes with Cranky right there. So in terms of the engines presented, nothing really came as a surprise. I think, though, some of the track, based on the pictures I remember looking at, some of the track maybe, you know, messed up with, to be determined if I actually, you know, keep a bunch of that. But engine-wise, everything we've looked at so far is in really good condition. So in an effort just to speed things up, and there wasn't a couple minutes of me moving all the trains away, that's exactly what I did off camera. Let's take a look at the remaining items in here. Oh, so there's a Salty. That's funny. I guess that was one of the characters featured in the image, but Salty, I mean, that bag was pretty full, so I guess I'm wondering if there'll be any other surprises in there. So let's see. I'm guessing this person, maybe like the only items, you know, that this person bought, or set pieces I'm talking about, is the Edward the Great set, because we've seen, you know, the evidence is there. We know that that set was, you know, purchased and everything. Here's the signal for that set. That's kind of a slam dunk. There was probably a starter set, which is where the Sir Topham hat comes into. and that is maybe where the yellow caboose came from. I don't remember the name of that starter set completely off the top of my head. So, you know, a relatively small collection in the scheme of things. I've definitely picked up bigger. And if you want to throw in maybe one of the other major purchases that this girl's parents made, there was Cranky there as well. So I'm just going to go through this. Oh yeah, so this was probably a figure 8 set with the riser. I have vague memories of what this looks like. I don't remember the name. I'll throw up a picture of it though. I've always loved these risers. You know, the classic ones are the red ones, but then they did come out with a couple of funky ones. There was a green one, there was an orange one, and I guess there was this, and there may have even been more colors, but these are always kind of a treat to behold. They're a lot sturdier than just like your brick risers, and they add a little bit of detail. And then these holes on the side here, if you have multiple of these, you can stack them and get some, like, you know, like level railways going. I mean, yeah, really complex stuff there. So track stuff, I'm going to kind of fly through this. Appears to be looking pretty good. Maybe I saw some stuff on the engines or something that made me think that some of this stuff wasn't going to be in the greatest shape. The camera's set very low, but you'll see how this signal is supposed to work. I had this signal on layouts very early in my YouTube career, and it was always fun, but then as I got older and some of my filming techniques changed, it was always annoying when stuff went over the tracks because I was using my hands. So it was like pushing an engine through this side and then maybe hitting it and collapsing, and so I think I eventually stopped using this stuff. But I believe this is an exclusive item technically to the Edward the Great set. It is maybe, I think the orange design is unique. Oh, that's funny. I was about to say. So mine, from what I remember, makes this clicking sound when you change the colors, but the knob over here has apparently lost that feature, but not entirely, I guess. So I think this is technically an exclusive item due to the orange up top and then also the design on the side there. I wouldn't be surprised if this tree came from the Edward the Great set, or maybe even the, like, I want to say Edward the Great off the top of my head, but we obviously are dealing with a starter set. Here's another Sir Topham hat. I got a bajillion of these. Yeah, really good condition. So the seller where this stuff came from did keep stuff in pretty good condition. I'm not like judging people based on, you know, what they did with their toys when they were a kid, because kids really don't have any concept of like keeping things nice and new. But I would say this Cranky may have been towards like 2007 or something released. It's like the second popular version of Cranky. It's kind of the green one. The first version is more, it's like grayer, I would say, and then there was kind of there was a greener one that was sold for a number of years. This is how I'm choosing to present Cranky because I don't have a better way at the moment. But Cranky is in good shape. There is a code on the bottom there, if you can see, written in white. That's not a marker, that's a code. So this, Archstone Tunnel, I think is what it's called. These were very common. This was featured in the Edward the Great set. Here is the bottom to that tree I was looking for. And even if you buy some stuff and you don't have the stump to the tree, they always make really good bushes. You just stick them by the side of the track there, and they look good. This is dated, this is actually dated 2001. That's really interesting. I believe they did a good job of updating stuff up until 2003 in terms of the dates on the bottom. Okay, here we go. Here's a nice indicator. So this railroad crossing sign is dated 2007. Very interesting there. And I was looking for the crossover piece between these two. So we do have a working Archstone bridge for what we need. A lot of this, it's all clickety-clack. Most of it is curves, it looks like. And yeah, the track is in really good shape. I have not seen anything broken or anything like that. Got a couple of switches in there. Man, there was a time, and I feel very fortunate that I'm no longer in this situation, but there was a time, man, where I was trying to get like all the switches that I could, because switches are just so helpful. You want to build a big Knapford yard, and now I have way too many, but there was a time where I'd be building layouts where it was like, I'd be down to like my last 2 switches, and it was like, okay, I could have a siding come off here, and this is the main line, or, you know, I put these two next to each other, and it's like a crossover opportunity. But anyway, I did want to show off these cards here. So I think this is probably a card game, and I did have Thomas cards growing up. It was sort of like a Go Fish thing, where or it had something to do with like the engine's colors, but then there were colors on the cards as well. So I would get confused because like Gordon's blue, but like the color they gave him up here was like red, and I always was confused by that. So anyway, it looks like we just have like a very small selection of the characters here. These definitely have some rare wear and tear, I should say. They've been colored on and stuff, and you can see they've done a good job actually keeping all the characters' colors the same. So I don't really know the purpose of what this game was supposed to be, because they all have tickets on the bottom left, and then like an envelope in the middle, and then a present on the right side. So again, I don't know if it's like a Go Fish game or like, you know, turn-based strategy. Probably not the latter. But anyway, Thomas and Friends Station Celebration. That's what these cards are. So yeah, I pulled out most of the stuff in here. Dump it out. By the way, I know I mentioned it earlier, but the bin that was included was really, really nice. I'll probably go into keep it. So anyway, very zoomed in here, but looks to be a complete Edward the Great set, minus the Spencer. That's a bit of an interesting one. I wonder if, I mean, this is also the era of the lead paint crisis where you could send engines back and get new ones. And we all, I mean, most people know that Spencer wasn't included in that. But at the time, I think there was so much confusion and so much hysteria amongst parents in that era that, you know, if you sent a character back for whatever reason, they would send you a new one. Like I remember hearing stories of people sending like a 2001 James. That is obviously not this James right here, but the parents they'd watch the news, and this is, you know, the internet is still relatively young. It was hard to find information, but parents would be sending their, you know, 90s, early 2000s James back to Learning Curve, and it's obviously not affected, but Learning Curve kind of did the right thing and was like, oh yeah, you know, let's get that James out of there, and then they'd send you a new one. So anyway, I wanted to bring up this like stop and go Sir Topham Hatt, and it has to do with a battery powered Thomas, which again is not present in this, so we do have a couple of things missing. But ideally, I think what happens is Thomas or a battery-powered engine would come along, and you just do a slight turn of Sir Topham Hatt right there. You can kind of see it pop up just slightly, and that is all it takes. And the battery-operated Thomas gets stuck right here, and then if it would continue to run its wheels and its motor until you flick Sir Topham Hatt kind of back to his standard starting spot, and then the engine runs away. So again, definitely not unfamiliar with this item. It is probably a pretty common item, and then they honestly even sold it separately, I want to say. But I remember seeing this in stores, and it was just like, it was always a bit unnerving to me that Sir Topham Hatt did not have his top hat on. I know it's right there off to the side, but you know, it's not super common in the TV series with seeing without his hat. And where I was at the time, you know, preparing to do YouTube, I was like, this is a destination that I can definitely pass on. But it looks like I have one right now, and there's no batteries required underneath. Yeah, actually, you know, pretty nice. And then, you know, I remember watching YouTube videos back in the day where, I mean, everybody has this Sir Topham Hatt, but if you wanted a more, I guess, maybe proper, you know, kind of thinking back to the late 90s Sir Topham Hatt, Lady Hat 3D models, this might be a nice substitute. So overall, really great lot. I am actually impressed at how well everything has been kept. The condition is great, and I will be keeping most of these items. All right, so my next item is in a bit of a rough shape. It is a old box that reminds me, I guess it's Play School branded. This feels like something you buy off of Amazon for like 20 or 30 bucks. It's been taped up at the bottom here. But when I picked this up, this was the box that the seller gave it to me, and as you can see, like immediately when I picked it up, it just split. So it's been sitting in my car on the way home, barely hanging together. It's been a couple weeks actually since I picked this up. So I understand why the seller put it in the way that they did, but they just did not secure the box very well, and so it is on the verge of like just completely falling apart. So again, I apologize. This is one of those items that I do not have any before pictures from. They've just disappeared into whatever, the cloud, I guess. So from what I remember about this, there's a lot of late 90s stuff in here, some early 2000s, and then there's a lot of generic stuff which I'm not a super big fan of. We'll probably just toss that to the side. But let's just work our way through this. So it looks like right off the bat we actually have some Brio stuff. And price tag says $9.99 on it. Just curious. I've never super been into Brio, but this is smart reversing tracks, and I think if your train has a special chip in it, or maybe it's just the regular battery powered trains, they will come up to this line if they're headed in this direction, and then they'll just suddenly go backwards. A little bit cool. So there's stuff in here, but it's taped up like really well. So I don't know if this stuff was ever used or... Okay, well the way it's packaged makes me think this is used. If you guys can see that, like the instructions, or excuse me, new. The instructions are in there very nicely. Yeah, look at that. So I know it's not Thomas related. Brio, this looks to be kind of older, just based on like the image there. That doesn't look like a recent thing. I wonder if the box has any info for us. Bunch of other languages on the bottom. Okay, so we're seeing 2006, which I'm like, oh, that wasn't too long ago, but I mean, that's, gosh, almost 20 years ago. So the way this is presented makes me think these were never used. Especially, yeah, since like this stuff's in here. Considering, and I guess like the seller could have used them and put them back in the box, but everything else here, as you see behind me, or behind the camera, is like not in great condition. So I would go on a limb and say this stuff actually maybe was never used. And the pamphlet, for example, I don't want to get too into this, but it appears to be in mint condition, if not brand new condition. So interesting. Okay, well, I don't know the rarity of this item off the top of my head, but that was kind of interesting. We're off to a very unique start there. So, yay, another whistle going straight in the trash. Let's see what we got here. So, we got Toby with no name. Maybe 97, I think is what that says. Interesting. We've got a Terrence way back in the day. Terrence would have had some plastic treads on them, but those are very easily lost. Got a tar tanker with a name on the bottom. I'm just curious. 2002. Okay. So, starting to get a little bit of a story here. I saw this Thomas when I first opened the box, and somebody came along with a marker or a pen, and looks like Thomas hasn't slept in days. I don't think that will be resellable. That's 97 as well. We got Dodge. I think I saw a Diesel 10 back there very quickly. So maybe some Magic Railroad stuff. A boxcar. Looks to be in pretty good shape. And then, wow, a Mattel James from like 2012 or later. In like perfect mint condition. That's very funny. I wonder if we can find the tender for this. We'll keep an eye out for that. Here's Diesel 10 really quick. He's got a little bit of an arch to his claw there, which again is just happens. Kids come along and they are wondering, like, I wonder how far his claw rolls back, or if it's flexible. And it's flexible to a certain point, so it's not going to lay flat entirely. But Diesel 10 condition-wise, looking pretty good there. Chinese Dragon from the 90s. Okay. I think I actually prefer the second version of this that came out in the mid-2000s, just a little bit more detail. This says 2000 on it. But it's always funny. I mean, this is literally like a shoelace they just nailed on here. I appreciate the creativity and honestly kind of the simpleness of this toy, but I do agree. I personally think that the one that came after this is just better. It's just, you know, just better. So Henry's face has a little stuff on it. Ooh, he's got some stuff on his side there too. Ooh, and on that side as well. I wonder if this Henry was played with outside or something. I hate to touch it, but I don't know. It looked like dirt to begin with, like soil, like potting soil. But I don't know. I don't know about that one. This Henry's in pretty rough shape. This is a recent, or well, a relatively recent, Taken Play Salty. He had like a little face piece that would go on him. But what's unique is he has this middle gold wheel, which is actually not a factory error. I made this mistake one time. It's like Pirate Salty or Treasure Hunt Salty or something, and it's like, I don't know if the story is that like he ran over some gold and it got, you know, covered, or that's why it's a different color. But anyway, that's not an error. Fun fact. Another Duncan, like I said, I think I said this earlier. Yeah, it was like everybody had Duncan but me growing up. This is Bert, the learning curve version. Looking pretty good there. Got Douglas's tender, so it would be interesting to say. I'm actually going to put James over here and Douglas's tender to see if we can find the rest. Another Toby right off the bat. Okay. This one is in similar condition to the first one. I would like to know the year, though. 2001? Wait, that wouldn't make sense because we'd have names on the bottom. Ooh, I can't. It's hard to tell. 2000. No. Yes. Maybe. I'm going to say 2000 because we would have had names on the bottom in 2001. So it is kind of funny when, you know, when sellers or parents of kids have to buy their kids double duplicate trains or something like that. I don't think I ever had that growing up as a kid. I really liked Thomas. I was very aware of my trains and everything, and so I don't think I ever even lost like my original Thomas or anything like that as a kid. I did lose it well over 10 years ago. It used to be in my collection, and now it's not. So we got another Gold Dome James. The other one that I looked at was in a little bit better condition, and this is what I was talking about earlier with the names on the bottom. I believe starting in 2001, maybe a little bit of 2000, they started putting names on the bottom. So I'll put James over here. We're going to look for his tender. This is probably Henry's tender, and has his name on the bottom, so we're looking at 2002. I didn't even look at Henry's name or date under here, I should say. It's actually funny, I kid you not. This is actually dated 2001, and then the tender's 2002. I wonder if there's another Henry in here, if there was just, I don't know, something interesting. Oh boy, it's actually very, I guess, shocking to see Mattel toys included with this lineup here, because we've had, what, a 97 Toby, and then we're going, what, 25 years into the future and get a Thomas. Yeah, surprising, but Thomas is in good shape. We got the second half of the box car here. For those who don't know, they kind of have inverse colors, I believe. One is blue and one is yellow. And then you open them up. I guess the cargo inside, yeah, it is mirrored, or whatever you want to call it. So that is technically the pack right there. But I never count on being able to get the whole pack. And speaking of, you know, the second half of a two-pack, here's a Sodor fuel tanker, which likely goes with this tar tanker here. I forget the name of this two-pack. Maybe it was just like fuel and tar tanker combo, something like that. I remember this being something that stuck out to me when I saw the listing, and I guess I really didn't pay attention to the other Mattel items in the lot. But this is just something that, you know, in my years of picking up secondhand Thomas toys, I have really not seen a whole lot of too many scrap monsters. And this is a unique toy because, you know, it's cool and everything, I will admit, but it is actually so tall, you can't get it through any bridges or tunnels or anything. So I think that's the point. It's like supposed to be this massive thing from, what was it, Tale of the Brave? But it also kind of reduces the playability there, unfortunately, because, you know, kids will find a way. They'll use their imagination. They'll come up with excuses. But playability, you know, like I actually do think that's a knock against this toy because it's too tall. Here is a Sir Handel, the old style with the name underneath, looking at 2002, I believe. Not bad. I do take the time to clean all of these engines up that I'm keeping. I clean them up. Rusty is another really common engine when it comes to Facebook used stuff. I'm not even going to bother looking at the date. The bold name underneath suggests early 2000s. He's in pretty good wear. This is really random. So we are actually covering The person I got this from is covering like 20 years of Thomas Wooden Railway history, because we had Toby, we had 1997 Toby, I believe, right here. And then we have an unpainted Butch from the Thomas and Friends wood line. Very, very random. I'll be curious to see if any other wood items pop up. Yeah, not my favorite. Alfie. I was going to say, I picked him up and he felt a little weird. My Alfie, you can hear the clicking into place. Well, actually, not really. Sometimes you can, but I was going to say mine is a lot stiffer. So either this Alfie was built differently, or he's a little loose here. Maybe he just got a lot of wear and tear. You could probably come in with a screwdriver right there and tighten him up so that this doesn't spin as freely. But Alfie is a bit of an interesting one, not the most common. We're going to get into other forms of merchandise here very quickly. Oh, this is a, it's like a pole and, yeah. It's like a pull and go, take along, James, maybe? Or take and play. This feels like a Mattel thing. 2000, oh no, it says Ghislaine. 2014 maybe? Really? It'd be that recent? I guess so, that makes sense. But anyway, you pull the tender back and then James goes shooting along. Kind of a gimmicky thing. Spoiler alert, I was never super into these toys, so I don't really know anything else about it. But cool nonetheless, a little bit of a surprise there. Here's a Peter Sam. So we've had Duncan and Rusty and Sir Handel in the lineup, and now we have a Peter Sam. So makes me believe that this person was pretty into Thomas, you know, kind of has some more obscure characters. This is actually quite surprising. So this is a Fisher-Price Bell, and there are two versions of this bell. There is this first version, and the second version is identical. It has this, you know, well, CGI face isn't the correct term because Bell was always in CGI. But the first version of Bell had red painted wheels, and then the second one, like they did with a couple other characters like Paxton and Fergus and Patrick off the top of my head. There were a couple others. They got rid of the red wheels, and that's such a shame because the red wheels just make Bell pop. And this is in really good condition. I have one of these. I remember like specifically going out and searching for a Bell with the red wheels when I was planning on introducing her because I thought she looked so much better with the red wheels. So a great find right there. We got a Toad here, and actually I was going to say, based on the merchandise or the characters I've looked at before, I was betting this was like a 2006 Toad from the back, but it's actually, it's not the Air Toad. That looks like early 2000s right there. It should be connected the same way. For those who don't know, the very first or second year they made Toad, you know, the whole thing is Toad faces backwards. They actually made him so he connects like this. It's not a factory error because they did it on purpose. They just weren't knowledgeable. They didn't really think through what they were doing. But fun fact there. So here is Mattel James's tender. So actually I'll put James back over here because we are complete. Here is a... Okay, I was like, I don't know which one of the diesels this is. This is Airy. Really good face right there. I like that. I miss when we had sinister faces. And then it's like an oil-covered Airy. This must have come from a pack or something, which, I don't know. This says 2011. What if it was Day of the Diesels related? But anyway, super cool there. Again, not... I think, like, in terms of the merchandise line that I know the least of, that's, you know, not Thomas Wooden Railway, obviously, it's a toss-up between Take Along and Take and Play and Trackmaster. I just was never super into those merchandise lines growing up, so not helpful in that respect. We have the dumper from Rusty and the construction cars, so I wonder if we have the mixer, because we have Rusty already. That'll be interesting to see. We have the first part of the Zoo Cars pack, and then similarly, we have Ivo Hughes, so we're missing the third yellow car here. We'll see if that shows up. So again, another narrow gauge engine. I think this child or children who played with these toys was pretty into Thomas, I would say. We have another Smart Track thing. What does it do? Smart Warning Track. This track makes the track reader engine toot, slow down, and return to normal. So instead of it sending it in reverse, it like almost, kicks the engine up a notch or slows it down or something. Brio does have some cool stuff, I will admit, but at least here in the United States, and maybe specifically where I live in the United States, it was always like really hard to find Brio. And it's definitely a premium toy even to this day. So I can't tell if this one's been opened or not, but looks to be. I mean, it's so easy to just take this out and slide it back in, but I mean, you just never know. I would say since it was kind of sitting down here, it was probably used at some point. But again, another pamphlet in mint condition. So yeah, I wish I had the pictures from when I first saw this lot and I could kind of give you my first impressions, but I kind of skimmed over all the generic stuff because that's obviously not what I was interested in at all. So we're going to get into more generic stuff here. Here's some track. I'm guessing this is Brio track, although that's kind of, I don't know if that'll focus. That's kind of nasty looking right there. I don't know if that's just discoloration or whatever, but yay. Generic caboose here, very brittle and probably won't survive. Let's see what else we got. We got some type of building here that barely fits on camera. This is that Play School brand, so what actually came in the box here. Looks like you can add track to the front here. You can kind of create some, the track is supposed to end here, but you could create a better view for Gordon remakes with Gordon smashing through if you really wanted to. There's nothing at the back. I'm definitely not going to keep that, but you know, it's cool to look at, I guess. Some telegraph poles, unbranded. Looks like they came with this set, so we're probably going to run into more pieces from that set here. Another Sir handle, which the first one, let's see. They appear to be, they're kind of used in their own way. Maybe the first one was in a little bit better condition, but again, it's almost like, I wonder if, you know, I mean, I grew up with a sibling, and it's like, if you're interested in the same toys and your parents really don't want to mess around with you guys fighting or crying or whatever, I mean, sometimes you'll buy two of the same toy, so it's like, that's my Sir handle, and then that's your Sir handle. Maybe that's what happened here. Here's Harvey. What's really interesting about Harvey, this is something I've noticed in recent years, like the Harvey that I have that was used in my series had like a gold dome, but then this is like a very yellow one, and I believe maybe like the first, see, I feel like that's dated 2002, so maybe like the first run of Harveys had the gold funnel. I think I said dome earlier, I apologize, it's the funnel, but it's definitely not as bright in later years, and Harvey was one of the characters I went out and bought when I was in the process of making a YouTube channel. It's not something I got way back in the day as a new item. New as in terms of when it was first released. Here's like a 2003 Percy that's been beat up pretty good. It would be useful for a custom or something. We got Gator. Gator never received a small magnets version, I think, because by the time Tale of the Brave came out in 2014, this is what Take and Play looked like, so funny there. Looks like we got a second half of our Ironworks, our Dirty Ironworks. Wait, wasn't that Airy? Okay, so riddle me this. We have two Iron Aries. So I'm guessing the pack did not include both. I'm guessing maybe this is one of those duplicate things. They were bought twice for whatever reason, but I was really hopeful. I thought we were going to have an Airy and a Bert, but Bert's the one with the facial hair, and you can tell on the front here, neither of these have facial hair at all. What's interesting, I don't know if they'll show it on the camera, but the oil patch on this one is darker than this one. Like, it's noticeably darker. That's like a brown, and that's like a chocolate milk type of dark. So, interesting there. Okay, we got another Henry. Remember how I had this whole Henry issue of the tenders not matching up? So this is a 2002 Henry. So the tender here actually goes with this Henry, and this Henry is in much better condition than that Henry. So that's really cool. We've reunited another family. Feels good. I'm seeing a mic back here. You can tell I'm like going for the Thomas stuff before anything else because it's what I know. I wonder if we'll find the tender. So we'll run through some kind of non-interesting stuff here really quickly. This cargo came with Butch. Wonder if this came with that. take along, take and play pack. I don't know anything. A really beat up circus car, like really beat up. These make great customs actually, because you just take a screwdriver. If you need like a four-wheeled custom like this, you take a screwdriver, unscrew the plastic bit, and then you have a chassis ready to go. And man, we even have some adventure stuff. This is without the magnets on the front. This reminds me of like a diesel pack, I want to say. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, quite the lineup. I think a couple generations of kids used these toys. So this is the second half of the Scrap Monster, and again, look how tall it is. I'll put up a regular Thomas here, and I think, you know, the camera's pretty close. I'll try to get them lined up next to each other, but you can kind of see Thomas would only have a little bit of room to spare going through a tunnel as it is, and then these are really high. This is a plastic piece that is flexible, but then this is not. This is hard plastic. So cool design, and it was definitely meant to be like this big, terrifying Scrap Monster thing, but one of the problems is, and this is just me speaking very honestly, is that it can't get through tunnels. If I had to guess, I think these pieces came with this play school thing. Cool. Not much to say there. Generic Brio. These look like Brio wheels, or no? Yeah, I don't know. The more I say, like, the more I just expose myself for not knowing. So maybe play school stuff, play school figure, cool. Play school engine maybe. Oh, this feels like Circo. This feels like, oh, Target. I wanted to say Target, because back in the day, actually, even after Thomas Wooden Railway left Target, they always had like an in-store Wooden Railway brand that was kind of full of this cheap stuff, and that's what it reminded me of. Take along thing. Here is Duke. We're needing a tender. Let's find Duke a tender. I think we're not gonna be able to reunite some families, unfortunately. But just as I say that, where is the dumper? Here it is. So this is actually technically a 3-pack with Rusty. I don't think it's very common not to have the piece of ballast in there. It just gets lost over time. We got some more track. I'm likely not going to keep any of this. I have plenty of curves as it is. But yeah, lots of curves, and that's because, if you can see at the top here, this is a figure 8 track, like probably only has 1 or 2 pieces of straight track, which is probably that piece right there. This bridge, which, is this the second half? Okay. So this bridge where you would go through the center here, I was going to say it felt like this piece was glued in or something, but it's just in there really snug. So, yeah, this is actually usable if you had such an interest. So, props there. Looks like the majority of this set is still intact. Again, I don't know a whole lot about the engines or the accessories included. So here's the locomotive that you get. This would maybe make for a fun little custom. It's pretty detailed, actually. If you just applied some paint and put a face on there, it'd actually be kind of an interesting Thomas custom, not gonna lie. We got some more. Oh, so fun fact, that station, which you see over there in the corner, remember how I said, oh, you could put, you know, two lines like this heading into the station? Well, I guess this is how they want you to use it. It's actually super similar to the service station. There is a special piece of track that came with the service station in Lorry 2 that is just like this. Probably one influenced the other, if I had to guess, but cool nonetheless. You can probably use that either way. So let's see here. We got Salty, which is a pretty common occurrence around these parts. We have a Wooden Railway Aries. So unbelievably, we have 3 Aries showing up in this video, and no Berts. Never had that happen before. Mike fortunately has a tender. That's very, very good. We have a 2012, 2013 Mattel Percy in pretty good shape. He has a little bit of a mark there. It's like a yellow mark. I'll try to get that off, because otherwise in pretty good shape. And we are down to our last couple of items, which is really hard for me to tell. This, I have no idea what it goes to. It's plastic? Maybe this, because this is, I thought this was unbranded or not Thomas for a sec, but that is actually the Diesel Works logo, and then underneath it says Made in Vietnam. That's not helpful. I am guessing, maybe this was a 2-pack? How about that as a 2-pack? I was thinking it was like a 4-pack with like an Airy and a Burt, and then maybe they both had 2 pieces of cargo. But now that I'm looking at this, I didn't give much thought to this second piece, this second cargo car that rolled in. Maybe 2 of these, maybe it was just a 2-pack, and this was the cargo that came with it. So we have like 1 complete with the cargo and then 1 without the cargo right here. Interesting. It's funny what gets saved and what gets lost over the years. Another wooden railway figure dude from this set probably, and a Coldie, a very beat up Coldie. Date on here, 97 maybe, to go with that Toby I was talking about. Yeah, 97. So, you can tell this was actually a very fascinating look through. That is it, by the way, and I'm not keeping this box, if it wasn't obvious. A very fascinating look through. We had some very, you know, like I said, I think my guess at the beginning was like late 90s, early 2000s, which definitely rung true. But we had a lot more like current stuff than I was expecting. Probably the latest stuff would have been Butch and this cargo piece, and there were other characters included in this pack. There was a Sir Topham Hatt's car and stuff, and then, for example, like this random Adventures cargo car, you know, 2017, 2018, that type of era. Very, very random as well. So with that in mind, I mean, we are covering 20 years of Thomas toys in this section of the video, which was a surprise, but very much appreciated. Probably, yeah, I'm just kind of staggered at just the variety we had. Like, I'm looking at stuff off to the side, and you have stuff like 2013 James, and then, you know, you're backed up against like the Chinese Dragon from like 2000. You know, just a very interesting collection of engines here. All right, friends, that's going to do it for this video. I really appreciate you all watching. I hope you had a fun time, and I'll see you on the next one.